economy. Learn more at paysbig.com. Must be 21 and a rewards member to play.
And off the drop, McDavid went forward and nearly got a shot on. The car sends it around. Marner waiting. Connor McDavid scores! Connor McDavid for
Canada. It's the final call from the final game of the Four Nations face-off last night. I don't know much about hockey. I know very little about hockey. I know very few of the players. I know the teams. I kind of know the rules. Went to some games, watched my friends in high school, but I'm far from a hockey expert. What was cool about this tournament, at least for me, is that, and this happens in sports sometimes, I went from, I don't care about this thing. I don't know this thing. What is this thing? I went from that to, oh, now I'm mad about this thing. Now I'm pissed that we didn't win this thing. And it only took, 3 or 4 days? It's the only place in life, really, that you get that. It doesn't happen in other facets of life. It's really only a sports thing. When it's like you can go from not knowing what something is, not understanding something, not caring about something, to, oh, now I'm furious about this thing. And it can only take, 2 or 3 days. That's why sports are funny. Canada winning last night, which I think a lot of people expected. A lot of the hockey smart people who were talking on my show last night, and this came up on Bill's show yesterday as well, talking about, I think Canada's going to get us. I think they're better. They were better, right? They were favored. Vegas is kind of weird, and two things I don't really understand or dabble with too much: hockey and gambling. So put them together, and I'm really up a creek. But I think a lot of people thought Canada was going to win. I think a lot of United States hockey fans were prepared for the reality of Canada winning. But then it comes down to the wire, and Austin Matthews has a couple great looks in overtime, can't convert. Okay, now I understand the Toronto Maple Leafs a little bit better and their whole thing, right? Can't win in closeout games, can't win in big games. And then Canada wins at the end, and I'm like, well, I didn't really expect to be here upset about hockey on my random Thursday night in February, but here we are. But that's why sports are fun, right? You can go from not understanding something, not caring about something at all, to all of a sudden being furious about that thing. And it doesn't take very long. That's why sports are funny, not always rational, right? Fan is short for fanatic, as people always mention and bring up, it seems, on sports radio. This is the Bill Michaels Show. Grant Bill's filling in for Bill today. Bill's off to Cincinnati, not beating the yearbook allegations, going back for I think it's a local Hall of Fame, a high school Hall of Fame, and an event. He was telling me about it a little bit at the Super Bowl. It's not that I wasn't listening. It's that maybe I was. I was listening. I was listening. I was listening intently. I just don't remember all of the details. I know that Bill's excited to go back to Cincinnati, and he likes spending time there. So he's going to take a long weekend down there. Might get some steaks with his Super Bowl friend, Solomon Wilcots, who we had on 2 weeks ago in New Orleans. So Bill is off today. I will do my best to put together a half-decent 4-hour show in his absence. The live stream is up and running, so the cheap seats, you should be able to jump in. I'll throw the chat on the stream so you guys can say your piece as well. And I'll take your calls too, 608-321-1670, YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, LinkedIn, TikTok, all of the things, all of the places where Bill normally throws the show. You can find it there. So please consume, and we'll have plenty of time to take your calls and your texts as well on the text line too. And I'm on Twitter at Wisco Grant. Coming up at 10:30, Jim Owczarski is going to be here, and I'm looking forward to talking with Jim because the Bucks were back in action last night. I want to talk about that for a second here. But also Bobby Portis has been suspended, and we're all trying to make sense of it. Like, why? So he took a Toradol instead of a Tramadol, and it sounds like it's a obvious mistake, an innocent mistake, at least with the story we're being told. Unless that story is a lie, this whole thing just seems kind of stupid and silly. Like the NBA is going to shut down a guy for 25 games. I don't get. Well, so we'll get the latest information from Jim Owczarski. Kurt Hogg is going to be here at some point, and I'll just be upfront with you. Kurt was on my show last night and was outstanding. He was great. Good Brewers information. He was covering the Bucks last night as well, so we heard a little bit about that. I'll play that interview when I feel there's a lull. I'll gauge it out. I'll sniff it out. Whenever I feel like there's a lull in the show, I'll stick that in there. Excellent interview. And then later on in the show, closer to 1 o'clock, Colton Bartholomew is going to be here. The State Journal. Colton is excellent. He used to be at the Lacrosse Tribune, and we would bump into each other. Our paths would intersect from time to time in lacrosse, doing local sports stuff there. Love Colton, and he's really, really, really good on the football side. But specifically, I think he's going to be a great resource for us to tap today because Luke Fickell just got an extension. And all of the football people, all of the reporters are telling me this is a formality. This is nothing unexpected. Okay, I'll buy into that. I'll understand that. That's fine. But I need you to explain it to me. I need you to make me understand why it's a formality, because the first 2 years have been anything but what was expected, right? This program does not seem to be on the right trajectory. I know they're bringing in good recruiting classes, but it kind of feels like it's stuck in a gear that's not really acceptable in Madison. Not if you're getting run off the field by Minnesota, Iowa, and Nebraska. Okay, so you tell me the coach's extension is a formality. It's fine. I'm willing to listen and believe, but you got to explain it to me. So Colton Bartholomew is going to explain it to us coming up at 12:30. If you're on the live stream, I see some comments. I have a shirt and tie on today. It's not because this is a special occasion. I'm filling in for Bill. I must look nice. I'm going to an event, a work event, a radio event after work today. And I did the math in my head last night. And I was either just going to have to wear this and wear it all day, or change in a hotel room when I'm already running late. So I just wore it. I'm not thrilled about it, although it kind of pops on the live stream, doesn't it? So that's why I'm not dressing up because I'm filling in for Bill, although let's tell him that. I'm sure he'll appreciate that. It's because I have to go to a thing later, and it's a pain in the butt to carry around dress clothes, and no one likes to change when they're rushed. So I just wore it. It's fine. I mean, my what does Bill always call them? My unmentionables. Cover up your naughty bits. He says my naughty bits are pinched because these are tight dress pants, so that's gonna suck. But other than that, yeah, that's why I'm wearing dress clothes. Thank you for mentioning and noticing over on the live stream on the cheap seats. Let's talk about the Bucks for a couple of minutes. They won actually a really nice, solid win. Like, that's a nice win to put on the board coming out of the All-Star break amidst the Bobby Portis suspension. And the Bobby Portis suspension is such a bummer because it feels like, all right, Dame's healthy, Giannis is healthy, Kyle Kuzma is here playing the role that the front office envisioned for him when they acquired him. We got everything. All right, let's go. Let's have a nice couple of weeks here before the play. Well, what's this? Okay, Bobby. So Bobby's out for the rest of the season almost now, 25. Sick. Great, because God forbid we want to have the entire roster available for a week, let alone 2 weeks. Let's just start with 1 week where everyone's together and able to build some chemistry. So the timing of this sucks. I really tip my cap to the Bucks because they were outplayed big time in the third quarter. They mostly played the Clippers to a draw through the first 2 quarters. Giannis coming back slowly. He was on a little bit of a minutes restriction. I think he only played in the low 20s. Where did he end up last night? Yeah, 23, 24 minutes. So they're coming back from break. Giannis coming back from injury. And then in the fourth quarter, they slammed the door. They outscore the Clippers by 15 points. Brook hits a huge shot at the end of the game. And Brook is not what he's been. Forget, 2020 or 2021 Brook. I don't even know if Brook plays with the same speed and physical ability that he had last year or the year before. But over the last couple of weeks, I find myself noticing plays that Brook is making. The end of the Wolves game is a great example. Last Wednesday night, going into the All-Star break with no Dame, no Giannis, and they went into Minneapolis and took the Wolves' lunch, stole it from them. Gary Trent Jr. was awesome, right? Kyle Kuzma made some plays, but I found myself noticing, there's Brook, really flashing in a big moment to protect the rim on a crucial possession. Or there's Brook flashing to help corral a loose ball, whether he's the one who's rebounding it or, passing it along or tipping it along to someone else. I thought Brook has given him some really nice moments. He hit that big 3 to really, really put the Bucks in a commanding position in the final couple of minutes. I had the hockey. This is what I was doing last night. I had hockey on the TV. I had playing Call of Duty on the other screen. Because here's the thing. All of my friends were playing Call of Duty. It's rare when you can get when no one has plans and everyone's playing Call of Duty. So I was playing a little Call of Duty. I was watching hockey, and then I had the Bucks on my phone. So I had 3 screens going, which is the most Gen Z thing that one could ever do. So the Bucks were on my third screen, and for the final 5 minutes, I basically was just watching the Bucks because they'd put themselves in a position to potentially steal a game that it didn't really look like they were going to be able to win. Giannis is playing unbelievable basketball. And I mean, Jesus, he finishes with 23 points in 24 minutes on 10 of 14 shooting. Efficient as efficient gets, 4 assists to boot on top of the rebounds. He's going to get the rebounds, right? We've run out of things to say about Giannis. It's funny because even amidst like a Shams report yesterday that Giannis could look elsewhere, and we can talk about that after our first break because I think it's lame and I have a couple things to say about it. But even amidst all of, that Giannis buzz yesterday, everyone's recognizing that he's right there in the MVP conversation, probably with Jokic and with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Like, he's playing brilliant basketball, even though it's been interrupted by injury and the roster's turned over around him and Chris Middleton has been sent to Washington. So really, really nice win for the Bucks last night. Can we get 2 weeks? Can we get 2 weeks between now and the end of the season? It doesn't have to be right now. It doesn't have to be at the end of the season. But at some point throughout the rest of February and through the month of March and into April, can we get a 2-week stretch where this thing looks like it's clicking? Just 2 weeks. That's all I need. Would that be conservative or liberal? I'm asking for so little. My request is so reasonable. Can I just get a 2-week stretch? Maybe realistically like 6 or 7 games where it's like, man, they found a rhythm. They found something here. I can see it. And when I see it on Tuesday night, it doesn't immediately disappear on Thursday, right? That's been this team's problem. Even when they have a great game and you say, there it is. That looks like the team that we've been waiting for. That looks like the team that they've been trying to build. And then they back it up a day or two later with just an absolute stinker, and you can't take them seriously. So at some point, can we just get a 2-week stretch? I'm not asking for a month. I'm not asking for, just give me 2 weeks. It's so reasonable. Doc Rivers talking about Bobby Portis' suspension. This is before the game last night, but this is the first public comment other than the statement released by Bobby Portis' representation about why Bobby has been suspended 25 games. This is a question from Eric Name and then an answer from Doc Rivers. We're going to listen to about 2 or 3 minutes of this just to get a taste.
I guess with Bobby, what's just kind of the communication been between you and him on the suspension and happening and just kind of...
It's been a lot of communication, obviously. This has been going on for a while. And it's really, it bothers me in a lot of ways because I want to make something clear. Bobby's not a drug user. All right. I hate that it just says that you flunked the drug policy. And so when people read that, the first place they go is the wrong place. This was as big of a mistake as can be made. Like it's a mistake. So it bothers me on a lot of levels. I think as a league, I'm trying to steer close to the middle here, but just we got to try to, rules are rules. I get it. But there are also human circumstances and common sense to me. And one thing Bobby's not is a cheater. And so to me, if that's where we have to try to figure out how to change this a little bit, because when it's clear that a guy Toradol, I don't even know it when it's that close.
I don't either.
and it's clear, you can tell now from the blood samples that was the only time ever that you would think that we could, do something less severe. But we have this rule, like if you do it, you're out, and that's the way it is. So I just feel bad for Bobby on so many levels. Dude's gone through a lot, this year with his mom passing and, his house been broken in, and then this, the thing I did tell him is this is going to be one hell of a story for you. Our goals haven't changed as a team.
So that's enough. I just wanted to get a little bit of Doc's reaction. Imagine that over the last calendar year, you've lost a parent, right? They've passed away, dealing with that. And I don't mean to make light of that, but imagine that has taken place. Imagine your home has been burglarized, not only costing you money and maybe costing you, some of your prized possessions, meaningful objects to you. And then imagine that if we're going to believe this story, your slap-dicked, hammer-headed assistant gives you a tramadol instead of a Toradol, and you get suspended for 25 games. You're in a battle with the league for weeks, and they levy a suspension as if you had been taking steroids all along, and you're going to miss the rest of the regular season. Not only missing 25 games, but you're going to miss out on $1 million+ in game checks. Imagine all that has taken place, and then Doc Rivers, in that voice, bends over, leans over, says, hey, you know what? This is going to make a hell of a story. I'd say, you know what, Doc? I don't need this in my story. My story's already pretty great. I'm Bobby Portis. I'm a playoff hero. I'm a folk hero of the city of Milwaukee. I play in the NBA, make millions of dollars. That's cool. That's cool It'll make a great story. I don't need this chapter. My story's already. It'll make a great story. Like, okay, Doc. I don't know that I would have been excited to listen to him there. There's got to be more to this story. I don't believe it. I don't believe that Bobby was given a slightly wrong pill. The names and the effects are similar. And the NBA is like 25 games, man. Rules are rules. Really? A league that lets abusers basically play without any heavy-handed consequence. A league that allows players to sit out games anytime they want. A league that has a joke of an all-star game that it doesn't like, but it mostly seems to accept. That league is going to suspend a player for 25 games over that. Again, if the statement is and what we've been told is true, which I have my doubts on, something doesn't add up. Here, let's take one call and then we'll take our break. 608-321-1670. It's the Bill Michaels Show. Who's this?
Hey, Grant, this is your buddy Derek in Albany.
Hey, Derek, what's going on? Now, I bet you have a Packers take today. You always have something to say about the Packers, right?
I do. If you look at what teams have what money, the New England Patriots, they got like $129 million under the cap. Oh my God,
they got a pile.
We're around the middle. I had an interesting question, and I posed to somebody at one of the Wisconsin papers, and he's emailed me back, but he hasn't gotten back to me finally. Is there a way, Grant, that you can make a trade? Let's say we want a Myles Garrett, and we don't want to we don't want to give 3 or 4 players. We might want to give like a draft choice. And what if we gave them money? What if we said, okay, we're going to give you our first rounder and our third rounder next year with $40 million? Can you do that? Can you take some money? Because if we have the money, can you do that?
So you're saying, can we pay more for something with money, less with draft picks?
Yeah, you can trade for Myles Garrett with a draft pick and maybe another player, but could you sweeten it with some money? I mean, I don't know if that's doable or not. I thought that was interesting. And you make a great point about Doc, man. I really like him.
I do too, really as a person. I just like.
Yeah, you're right.
He's kind of a meme. You know what I mean? He's a little bit of a walking joke. I don't have anything against him, but yeah.
Well, he's an ex-player, and my favorite player of all time in the NBA was Pete Maravich. Can you imagine Pete Maravich if there was a 3-point line when he played in college? The records he would have had.
Right.
Well, Pete Maravich used to dribble a basketball, Grant, out the window while his father was driving a pickup truck.
That's when kids worked on their skill. That's when they would dribble 2 balls and work on their hand-eye coordination. Now it's just jacking up half-court shots with your buddies. That's all it is.
Well, yeah, like Pete Maravich is the guy that made me a Utah Jazz fan. And, of course, I lived through all that. I saw so many games with Stockton and Malone, and now the Jazz are just a joke. But listening to you guys, I've become more of, Wisconsin-centric all the way around. I've been a Packer fan since the mid-'60s. And I've been a Badger fan because having been out to Green Bay many times, I've been a Badger fan since maybe the early 90s, late 80s, and really enjoy them. And I'm so excited about the basketball team. But I'm also listening to you guys talk about the Brewers and the Bucks. The Brewers situation, man, I've said it so many times. I've been on so many national programs talking about it as a caller. You got to change this structure, man. The NFL, I'm not for socialism. The NFL essentially is socialism. Every team has the same structure, the same amount of money. That's how a team can be 3-11 in 2 years, be a Super Bowl competitor. Some kid, Grant, has got a poster on his wall in Pittsburgh, some player he's rooting for, or that pitcher, Skeens, or whatever his name is. Yep. He's going to be gone in a few years because they can't afford him. That sucks. I mean, look at all the great teams. You're too young, Grant, to remember this, but in the early 70s, you had the Reds, you had the Pittsburgh Pirates, you had the Oakland A's, you had the Kansas City Royals. You had a bunch of teams that were great. But this was before cable TV. This was before all the huge money. Everybody had the same structure. Everybody had the same opportunities. Mm-hmm. And now you've got like 6 or 7 teams.
There was just so much less money in the thing. And I think that's the thing, Derek. And I got to cut you off because I got to run. Right now, everyone makes so much money and the stakes are so high, right? That it's, everything is about the bottom line and the dollar, which is fine. That's why the players are allowed to make so much, right? So everybody benefits. The game is just approached a little bit differently. I'm not sure that I necessarily agree that Pittsburgh can't afford Paul Skeens. It's difficult with a pitcher, right? Because the Brewers can give Jackson Chourio $80 million before he ever plays in a major league game. And you feel kind of okay about it as long as he's not a complete and total bust. That contract isn't going to kill you. With a pitcher, you get Tommy John or you get a shoulder surgery, your career could forever be altered just like that, even if you're playing really well. But I think, look, the Pirates could spend more money than they do. I'm not saying that the Pirates could have the Dodgers payroll, but the Brewers can sign Yelich, and they've given big contracts before. You got to be strategic. You got to be smart about it. And this is why when we talk about a salary cap, I also say, and I'm a small market guy, but you need to talk about the idea of a salary floor as well, because you got a team like the Pirates saying, well, we can't pay anyone. Well, you can't have a payroll like the Dodgers, but to say you can't pay anyone and you can't do anything, that is a lie and a big disservice to the fans. Let's take a break. That's an interesting thought about the Myles Garrett trade, Derek, and I'll address that on the other side. Any other thoughts? 608-321-1670. I'll get to those on the other side as well before Jim Owczarski joins us at 10:30.
Ready? This is the Bill Michaels Show on the Wisconsin Sports Zone Radio Network.
Bill Michaels will resume in 3 minutes. Bill Michaels will resume in 2 minutes. Bill Michaels will resume in 1 minute. Bill Michaels will resume in 30 seconds.
We got back to being the aggressor for sure. Unfortunately, we came out half. They came out of half, and they were clearly the more aggressive team. I'm mad at myself. I kind of started us off poorly. Not going two hands to get the ball from Ross's pass to the back of the next turnover. But our bench did a great job of picking us up. Scoot, was just phenomenal, and obviously Giannis came in, did his thing. Yes, I did have fun, and this is how I had fun. I'm going to give you a whole list of things. Actually, just one. We won. It was great.
It's Brooke Lopez. Comment about being aggressive, and then a comment about having fun. Sometimes, we talk Bucks, and it's an 82-game regular season, and sometimes it's difficult to really wrap your arms around the thing. It's like, well, if Giannis is hurt or if Dame isn't hurt or it's the second night of a back-to-back, like something that I don't like about the current NBA, this presents in many different forms, but the root of what I don't like about the current NBA and what needs to be fixed or tweaked, they need to find a workaround to this. It just feels like way too many of the regular season games don't matter. I understand they can't all matter. Not every night is going to be no-holds-bar, smash-mouth, kick-ass overtime basketball. Duh. Right? Just like every game of the 162-game baseball schedule isn't gotta have it, must win, 9 innings, extra innings, right? High leverage. Like, there's a lot of games. Some of them aren't going to be wire-to-wire electric. I get it. But it seems like in the NBA, we've reached a point where it almost feels like the majority of games are thrown to the side. It's like you could look at a 4-week schedule of Bucks basketball games, and you could maybe circle 2 or 3 as these are the big ones. We're going to draw most of our conclusions from these games, right? We're going to focus on these games. We're going to talk about these games. And a lot of the other ones, like, okay, a back-to-back between Detroit and Charlotte on a Monday, Tuesday, and whatever. Giannis didn't play in the second week, right? What's the word that I'm looking for? When you throw something away, when you set it to the side, we discard. That's the word I'm looking for. We discard games way too often. And again, I understand they're not all going to be the most important, best, most competitive games of basketball ever played. But we've got to a point where it feels like most of them are just discarded and we only focus on a couple here and there. So I understand the NBA regular season, it's difficult to talk about and it's difficult to wrap your arms around because we're not really sure. We've been conditioned that this game doesn't matter, that game doesn't matter. So when the team loses, should we be mad? When the team wins, should we be really happy? Right? Reacting and talking about these games has been made difficult by the way that the league is operated and by the way these games are interpreted and covered and talked about. Sometimes this is a very simple, very, very simple concept in sports. Just winning. It doesn't matter who or when or how or the schedule, or just getting a win, getting an opportunity to celebrate with your teammates, getting an opportunity to come back to the locker room and be happy, getting an opportunity to practice and watch film and install a game plan and then implement that game plan on the court and then have it work. That's so, so important. Even if the team you're playing against isn't any good, or even if it's a game that not many people are taking seriously. So I know Brooke is just kind of joshing around when he said, yeah, we had fun because we won.
Yes, I did have fun, and this is how I had fun. I'm going to give you a whole list of things. Actually, just one. We won. It was great.
Just winning. I know it's so simple, and I know in the NBA we've lost that idea. We've lost that concept because so many games are just discarded. We throw them to the side. Well, that game didn't matter. Second game of back-to-back. That game, well, Giannis didn't play that game. Hey, you know what? Winning is good. Winning is good. NBA fans never forget that and never stop accepting that and never stop demanding that from your teams. Winning is good. That's what this is about, even though we've lost that a little bit. So the opportunity to come out of the break, get started on the second half of the season. It's really like the final third because pre-All-Star and post-All-Star aren't balanced the way that they are in at least Major League Baseball. The NFL is different. The Pro Bowl that's something completely different, right? To start the second half out on the right note, to get Giannis and Dame back healthy, to start building some momentum. Can we get 2 good weeks? That's all I'm asking for. Can we get 2 good weeks? I would love to see 2 good weeks without a clunker, without a stinker, without any injuries. Just a nice 2-week stretch, which is hard. It's not a big ask. I'm not asking for them to go undefeated the rest of the year. Can I get a 2-week stretch between now and the start of the playoffs where I'm like, if we get that team in the playoffs, we might just have a shot at this. We might just be able to slap something or cobble something together. That's what I'm looking for. And we have yet to get it yet. But if we get it now, then we could talk about maybe they're peaking at the right time. I don't know. Sports fans, we could talk ourselves just into about anything. Jim Owczarski, the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel. I believe he's already in Washington, D.C. Where do the Bucks play next? Because I talked to Jim last night, and he said, hey, I don't know if Bill wants me tomorrow, but blah, blah, blah. And I said, Jim, you're never going to believe this, you son of a gun. I am actually filling in for Bill. I'd love to have you, which puts Jim in a tough spot because then if he says no, I will take it as a personal affront. He's saying, no, you're not worth my time, Grant. So I kind of backed him into a corner. But very excited to connect with Jim. They are in Washington to play tonight, the second game of a back-to-back. Jim is already in D.C. He is standing by. He will join us next on The Bill Michaels Show.
This is The Bill Michaels Show on the Wisconsin Sports Zone Radio Network.
Bill Michaels will resume in 5 minutes. Bill Michaels will resume in 4 minutes. Bill Michaels will resume in 3 minutes. Bill Michaels will resume in 2 minutes. Bill Michaels will resume in 1 minute. Bill Michaels will resume in 30 seconds.
thought we guarded the ball. I thought our length was a major factor out there. I thought Brooke, Jericho, Giannis, Kuz, all just their length. That was big for us. Our guards fought. I thought guarding Harden and Kawhi, trying to take them to the hand we wanted to take them to. I thought we did the assignments tonight in the second half for sure.
Really good fourth quarter last night. Doc talking about that. You heard a Brooke Lopez cut last segment, talking about how they really got aggressive on defense. And I know Brooke has definitely lost a step. He's maybe lost a couple of steps. But I'm a sucker. I like the guy so much. I get such a kick out of him. And he can still, in moments, give you a play defensively with his length and with his really, really high IQ and experience level, making a game-changing defensive play, altering a shot at the rim, or pulling down, as we saw late in that Minnesota game before the All-Star break last week, like pulling down a big-time rebound or helping the team around him secure a big-time rebound at the end of the game. I thought last night was a nice moment for the Bucks. A lot going on with the Milwaukee Bucks. Luckily, we have Jim Owczarski here joining us. So between, let's see, Bobby Portis, a Chris Middleton revenge spot tonight, Giannis coming back from injury, there's a lot going on with the Bucks all of a sudden as the second half of the season starts, Jim.
Yeah, Grant. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
A lot happening. I mean, obviously the breaking news yesterday with Bobby Portis kind of came out of nowhere. And then, Giannis I'm curious, Grant, if Giannis would have played, had Bobby not been suspended. He was on that really strict minutes restriction. We'll see if they want him to play 2 games in a row, right, tonight. Okay. I'm sure he would love to play Chris here in Washington. But we'll see that in a couple hours. And then, came out here to DC early, Grant, to talk to Chris. His first interview since being traded back on February 5th, and pretty emotional for Chris. Pretty raw, I think, for a guy who, isn't outwardly that way. So of course, head over to jslline.com and check out that story, because he definitely grieved being traded from the Bucks. It took him some time to kind of process that, and so I thought Chris was pretty open. So it's been an eventful 24 hours or so since the Bucks officially started the second half of the season.
Well, we can get into Bobby here in a sec, what and maybe what we will come to learn, or maybe the information we have now, maybe that's all we're going to get. But I want to ask you one more thing about Chris, because your story up at the Journal Sentinel is excellent. And one tidbit that I kind of circled, and you don't need to give us all the goods because I want people to go read your story. But Chris seemed to understand, as bummed as he was, getting bounced in the first round has consequences, right? Especially 2 years in a row. I think that's probably a big part of the reason they weren't playing on Christmas this year, and probably a big part of the reason the Bucks looked around and thought, okay, well, like, we got to do something. You can't go out in the first round in back-to-back years and just continue with the status quo. And based on what you wrote and what Chris said, he seems to understand that.
Yeah, look, Chris Middleton has always come across me, Grant, as one of the more self-aware athletes. He has pride and an ego, and he knows he's a good player, but he never carried himself in a way that maybe was beyond his ability. And the reason I prefaced that with this, Grant, is because of what you said. He goes, look, there are consequences to not winning.
Yeah. And
he understands his trade is a consequence of their results the last couple years. And it's just, it's an interesting thing to hear him say about himself, considering his status with the team, considering the winning he did provide, and the little bit of unknown of, well, could he have gotten back there, right? And he also addresses that, Grant, where we're effectively saying, no, like, I wasn't going to get where the Bucks needed me to get to physically, which I thought was also really interesting, because Chris never would get into that kind of stuff, in the moments in Milwaukee. So yeah, Grant, it was really interesting to hear him just sort of acknowledge, hey, this is the business we're in. And unfortunately, I was that guy this time when it came to, the job not getting done, so to speak.
And it's not always fair, right? When a team makes a move That's what the money is for, right? I believe the phrase is it's not so show friends, it's show business. But Chris was healthy in the playoffs last year, healthy enough to be pretty darn good. You know what I mean? It's not like he was the one that missed their playoff run last year, but he's the one who's a little older and coming off ankle surgery. So I feel for Chris. He seems to get it as much as he's bummed out. And I think Bucks fans were really bummed out by this trade too. But I think we also get it. And now we watch Kyle Kuzma a little bit. It's like, oh, there's some youth and some springiness and some length there, right? Even if he's not long for this franchise for years and years and years, right? You kind of understand why the Bucks did it. Let's talk about this Portis injury, because Bobby is not one of their, 2 or 3 best players. It's not like it's Giannis, Dame and Bobby. But for the purposes of navigating the rest of the regular season, he's 26 to 28 minutes a night. He can play over 30 if Giannis or Dame is missing time and they need someone to step up, and he can create his own shot on some level. Like, he's an important player for navigating the regular season, and they're going to have to make adjustments and tweaks. Let's just talk about the basketball first. Without him, they're going to have to adjust some things.
Yeah, and you saw the first of that last night with Jericho Sims finally playing.
Yeah.
Right? He had not seen the court since coming to the team on February 7th. And what's interesting about that is Giannis wasn't playing in those games. And those couple times we asked Doc, he basically said he's not going to play. So, like, our big men are Bobby Portis, Brook Lopez, and Kyle Kuzma. And I think what we need to see going forward is once Giannis is back to 33 minutes, does Jericho Sims go back to the bench? Or is he going to show some things in this minute restricted window for Giannis that keeps him out on the court? And what I'll say is, look, Andre Jackson was nowhere to be seen, right? And so someone's minutes has to go if a new player comes in. What I'm curious, Grant, is Doc has shown this year he will. You can earn your minutes with him.
Okay.
That's the positive way to say that. And I think on the other end of it is that means someone else is getting benched,
Yeah.
right? And so I think to Bobby's absence, being that big guy not playing, Jericho makes all the sense. He's already on the team. You may not have to put Bobby on the suspended list and sign guys to a couple 10-day contracts. If you remember, they signed Greg Monroe to a 10-day contract back when Brook had surgery. DeMarcus Cousins was on the team briefly. If Jericho's able to play with Giannis or around Giannis as a non-shooter, you might be able to keep, not have to sort of mix and match the back end of your roster. So yeah, we'll see. We'll see how if there's a trickle down effect there, Grant. If Andre's the guy who can't play because Jericho also is not a shooter. But I think that's the immediate answer. And honestly, they've got 4 more games to figure that out because they're not allowed to put Bobby on the suspended list until he hits the 6th game of the suspension. So I think at least for this next week and a half, or a week, I should say, to play a lot of games.
Yeah.
Jericho Sims is probably the immediate answer.
And that probably makes Ajax the odd man out. You were correct, because they can't have 2 non-shooters necessarily. I don't know. Maybe they find something. Maybe Doc discovers something that he can put in his back pocket, or a lineup combination or something. Who knows? I'm not going to say that this could be a silver lining or a blessing in disguise, because it's 25 games, which is basically the rest of the season. Let's talk about that. Bobby Portis' representation puts out a statement, makes it seem like a very innocent mistake without any drastic consequences to Bobby's health or his performance. I just got to feel like, and maybe this is the sports radio guy in me, I just got to feel like there are some details of this that we're not familiar with. Because if this story is true, the story we're being presented, it seems like the NBA is going a little nuts on this.
So there's 2 things there. One, there's a zero tolerance policy for the NBA for drugs.
Sure.
Outside of marijuana, I believe. But there's a couple things. So one is Bobby admitted to taking the banned substance. My understanding is it's not just the statement that he released after the suspension was announced. No, he admitted to taking the banned substance after he tested positive. So there's that. And then, Grant, this is very serious. He took medication, or a pain medication, that was prescribed to someone else.
Sure.
And that's a non-starter either. while it could be phrased in a way, that's a very serious thing. Like, you and I should not do that. I know Doc Rivers, tried to apply it to himself by saying, "Hey, my hip's hurting. I'm on the golf course. My buddy gives me an Advil." Could that not be an Advil? Like, okay, like we've all lived that life.
Yeah.
But the reality of it is that you should not take other people's prescribed medication. So I think that's where, despite the believability of this, the harshness that it feels like, Grant, it's those two factors that are the most important. He admitted it, and you can't do that. You can't take other people's prescribed meds. So that's why there's really no appeal process here for Bobby. That's why. And look, 25 games. The league doesn't really suspend guys for drugs. Like, this league, it's not like the NFL, Grant. Like, there aren't a lot of drug suspensions in the NBA. They're generally 25 games for first offenses. So it's just something they don't really play around with in terms of their discipline. And so, yeah, you're right. It is 30% of the season on balance, and it is 25 of the last 29 games of the Bucks regular season. So it is a massive blow. But I think from the league's point of view, they just sort of held the line with what it is that they do and why they do it.
And that's a good explanation. And I think a way that most of us hadn't thought about it. Maybe the suspension isn't necessarily about the ends. The ends can be explained as, well, this is what happened. That's not so bad. It's more about the means. Okay, well, how did you end up in the spot where you took the wrong pill? It's because, okay, so that explanation adds a lot. Final question for you. This is what I want to see from the Bucks before the end of the season. You tell me if this is a good way to approach it or realistic at all. Can we get a 2-week stretch at any point, do you think, where it's like, there it is? That's what it's supposed to look like. That's what Dame and Giannis are supposed to do together. Those are the buttons and the levers that Doc should be pushing. Can we get a 2-week stretch at any point before the regular season ends where it's like, that's a sample size that I can buy into, and that can maybe give me hope for this team doing something once the postseason starts?
I always assume a team will be healthy. Okay. You can't expect it, but I think when you're talking about like the high ends of things, unless there's season-ending injuries, right? I will assume that this lineup, even without Bobby, is going to get healthy here. Grant, I think once Giannis gets back to 30 minutes, we'll see if that takes a week or two. But we've seen high-level basketball from this team. As we talk, they're the only ones who have won a championship this season, and I do put some stock into that. We've seen them play 72% winning basketball for more than 2 weeks. So, even though their schedule is very difficult in terms of the teams they're playing and their length, I noticed that you said you didn't say wins, you said high-level basketball, and I think you can do that even in a loss. And so, Grant, I do think my only caveat is I think Giannis does have to get to 30-ish minutes. But last night was a heck of a start against a team right in the thick of the Western Conference playoff run, in playing some really solid switchy defense with your best player on the bench and your second best player not shooting the ball at all.
Yeah.
So, Grant, I don't think I'm going out too far on a limb to say, I think Bucks fans will see, a stretch of play where you're like, oh, okay, I kind of see why the moves were made in early February.
I would like to see that high-level basketball coincide with wins. I understand they're not necessarily directly correlated on a night-to-night, but man, wouldn't it be nice? Like, and Jim, I think this is why the NBA can be tough for people, and I mentioned this right before I brought you on. It's like, where there's so many of these games that we explain away. They lost, but. And I just feel like so many of these games, the result needs to matter more often than it matters. And I think that's, so I know you say that, and they got some tough competition, and I think they can play those games tough and not win, and it's not the end of the world. But I think that's something that people are struggling with the NBA right now. We're constantly telling each other, well, that loss, it's not a big deal. That's not a big deal. Well, it's too many games that aren't a big deal. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and Grant, they are in a stretch where they are. And look, I remember a conversation with you and Bill earlier in the season, actually after that start, where I said, actually, you could probably find the tape where I said they need to win, right? Like you can't at some point,
yeah,
you have to win a bunch of games, and it doesn't really matter like the who's, what, whys, and wheres. And I guess my hedge there, Grant, was like yesterday was just the first game they had played with Kuzma and Kevin Porter Jr., Jericho Sims' first game. Like I think the calculus had changed a little bit for this team since the trade deadline,
sure.
With wasn't available. But no, I'll agree. I mean, look, they are perilously close to the play-in. I mean, I think they have tiebreakers and enough of a cushion where that's not really a concern. But are you going to feel real great if they're the 5th seed and they've got to beat New York, Boston, Cleveland all in a row? Like, I don't, that wouldn't be great. Or 2 out of the 3 teams, you know? And so, yeah, Grant, I agree with you. Like winning, but look, you can play high level basketball. Chances are you're going to win.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, I think for me, it was more of, you might not go 10-1
yep,
or 9-2 in that stretch. It might be 6-4, whatever. You know what I'm saying? Like you might not be like shooting up the standings, but you go, wow, like you're really making some strides here to give you some promise going into the playoff.
And we'll have to discern a little bit when we watch these games and look at the box scores to really try to parse together, considering what this team's going through, Bobby's absence, Giannis coming back. And I think we're able to do that. Jim, appreciate you dealing with me instead of Bill. Enjoy your time in DC, and we'll all go read that Chris Middleton story if we haven't already. Appreciate it.
I appreciate it, Grant. Thank you.
Jim Owczarski, enjoy your time in our nation's capital. He's covering Bucks Wizards tonight. Appreciate his time. I kept him a question or two longer than I probably should have. But oh well. He can't yell at me because by the time he comes back on again, Bill will be hosting and not me. So that could be a Bill thing. All right, let's take a 3-minute break. We'll wrap up hour number 1 of the Bill Michaels Show. We're just getting started.
Covering Wisconsin sports like a blanket. This is the Bill Michaels Show on the Wisconsin Sports Zone Radio Network.
Bill Michaels will resume in 3 minutes. Bill Michaels will resume in 2 minutes. Bill Michaels will resume in 1 minute. Bill Michaels will resume in 30 seconds.
You got to hit it, kick it, rock it, put it in the pocket.
Welcome back. Final segment of the first hour of the Bill Michaels Show. So appreciative of Jim Owczarski dealing with me. He texted last night and said, hey, with everything going on with Bobby and Buck's now back for the second half, if Bill needs me tomorrow, more than willing, happy to come on, which is why I love Jim. I love when guests are like, hey, big Bucks day or big story if you want me to come on. I said, Jim, you'll have to deal with me, but I'd love to have you. Excellent conversation. And I love routine radio hits. Jim joins us every week, and Jim's so good at this. I love doing it routinely because then the guest or the host can say, oh, I remember a month ago when we talked about this. I remember earlier this season when we talked about this. Let's circle back and see how that has changed or how that has evolved. And I do remember, and maybe I'll be able to go back and track down the audio. I have a good idea of when this conversation would have taken place. So we'll see. I know I'm hosting today, but I'll put my producer skills to the test. Early on in the year, when the Bucks got off to that horrid start, but a couple of those losses were to really good teams, like the Celtics or the Cavs. And I remember Jim coming on and said, yeah, guys, it's nice to play the Celtics close or to play good basketball against the Cavs. At some point, you got to win. You got to win games. You got to start stacking wins at some point. And I think that's my bugaboo, or one of my bugaboos with the NBA. I think the sickness has lots of symptoms, but the sickness is too many games don't matter. Too many games are thrown aside and have no meaning, right? So early on in the year, the Bucks get off to this horrid start. Their record stinks, with so many people like, well, look at who they're playing. They're playing the Celtics. They're playing the Cavs. And I remember Jim, and I'll try to go find this audio. He's basically like, yeah, but at some point, you need to bank wins. Like, you just need to win basketball games. That's the point of the sport, the point of the league. So I understand it's not all about the wins and losses, but I'd like for it to be a little bit more about the wins and losses, even now without Bobby Portis and Giannis coming back from an injury, and their schedule's going to be pretty tough between now and the end of the regular season. Hour number 2, Kurt Hogg going to join us at 11:30 to talk Brewers baseball. The lineup for their first spring training game is out. Pat Murphy just showed the reporters. I see the pictures. I'll share it with you coming up next.
Our experts are available year-round. If something ever goes wrong, I need
Small business owners want the same thing, to make their business succeed. At Rural Mutual, they help that happen. As the third largest writer of commercial business in the country, they take the time to learn the business so they can properly protect you. Call the local agent today. Rural
Love is in the air at Casino Hotel Milwaukee. This February, play for your heart's content in the $300,000 game show. Thursday night, you could love your prize or leave it for another. For a chance to cuddle up to thousands of cash and prizes, just play it or leave it. Only at Potawatomi. Learn more at paysbig.com. Must be 21 and a rewards member to play.
If you've ever talked to Mark, if you ever talked to anybody, quotes, especially in that setting, they tend to ramble off. And Mark, I can't remember exactly what the question was, but I think it had to do with the Yelich extension. Would you do it again or something like that? And he was explaining what goes into decisions of that caliber. And he had opened it with asking that rhetorical. And instead of just answering his own rhetorical, he went into this long, I'll admit it, rambling kind of tangent covering 4 or 5 different things without coming back to actually answer his own rhetorical. And I'm not defending Mark. For all you folks on Twitter that have been calling me a corporate shill, scub it. This is reality. There's a lot more to the quote than what got printed in the paper. So he was basically trying to explain how both of those things are his job as the owner of a Major League Baseball team, as the steward of baseball in the community. He wasn't saying that it's not his job to win the World Series. And for people who actually think the owner of a Major League Baseball team doesn't want to win a World Series, to think that isn't the goal, first of all, you're absolutely insane. I highly recommend BetterHelp.com. Seek help, because that is not the case.
That's Andrew Wagner from Wednesday. He was on with Bill. That was a very good conversation. I recommend you go back and check it out in podcast form if you weren't listening when that conversation took place. Just gets us into hour number 2. I want to talk about the Brewers for a couple of minutes. The lineup has been announced informally, but it's been announced for their first spring training game, which I believe is tomorrow. I don't know at what time. I don't know against who. I don't know where. I know tomorrow is the day. Pat Murphy is holding up the lineup card in his office. A couple of Brewers reporters, Andrew Wagner, Sophia Menert, I think Rosiak, and the previously heard Andrew Wagner posting the picture as well. Terang is batting leadoff at second. Churio in left field batting second. Did I say that correctly? Terang batting leadoff, playing second. Churio in left field hitting second. Okay. It's Friday. My brain's nearing the end of the week. Let's just say that. Contreras hitting third is the DH. Mitchell in center. Bowers at first. Ortiz hitting sixth at shortstop. Frelick in right field. Haas catching, and Durbin at third. So your infield alignment, and this is the part that I'm most curious about. Terang staying at second, Ortiz moving to short, Caleb Durbin playing third, which is what I would have expected. And it's a spring training game, so it might not matter, but this is all we have to go on. There's a show that we're doing right now, so we're going to talk about it right now with the information that we have right now. That's the alignment. That's the alignment that I would expect, and that's the alignment that I think I continue to expect, given Terang's excellence at second, and given the comments from Mark Attanasio earlier this week. And he's like, well, where did you want us to add? Except for maybe third base, which to me signifies that they consider Joey Ortiz the next shortstop, and the hole then that's been created is at third. It's not at short, the position that Willy Adames vacated when he departed in free agency to go sign with San Francisco. So there's your lineup. Yelich is unavailable already. Great. Kidding, of course. I'm thrilled that he's going to be ready, at least he says, for opening day. I think that's one of my biggest points of excitement for the season, is watching hopefully a healthy and uninhibited Christian Yelich right from the jump. That's something that I'm really, really excited about. So that's something that I bookmarked. He's not in the lineup for tomorrow, but should be ready for opening day. His words and the words of others in and around the Brewers who have talked on the subject. So if you have a Brewers thought, great. If you have a Bucks thought, that's mostly where we spent our time in hour number 1, if you're just joining, because we had Jim Owczarski on and because the Bucks played last night. So that's where we started. We could continue to have those conversations if you have something to add. Otherwise, we can bring the Brewers in. Kurt Hogg is going to be here in about 20 minutes. I am not as fired up about Mark's comments as Bill has been. Maybe that's because Bill handled the fire. I can be a little bit of the ice. Maybe it's because Bill brought so much snooze and energy to the thing. I was like, all right, Bill's got it covered. I don't need to be all fired up. I don't need to be mad. Yeah, it's not the best look and it's a little clunky, but that's what you get when you throw a rambling owner in front of a microphone and don't say, well, he should never spot, because then we'd kill him for never talking, right? Do you want your owner to answer questions and face the music or not? Right? When an owner speaks, sometimes they ramble because they're, I would say billionaires, but Mark is not a billionaire. They are very, very rich and don't often have to answer to other folks' schedule or wants and needs. So they just start riffing, which is fine. I'd rather have a I'd rather have a transparent owner. And Brewers fans, look, for all the complaints about the Brewers spending, I get it. I think a lot of that, I'd say 90% of that, is the context of the market in which they play and the payroll and the money that the ownership has. And you can complain about that. You can't complain about the Brewers lying to you. And there are some owners, there are some, well, we don't have the money. Well, we wanted to spend, we couldn't. I think there are a lot of owners who are very disingenuous and are not transparent with the fan base. The Brewers are. They've told us 6 ways till Sunday over the last couple of years between David Stearns and now Matt Arnold and Mark Attanasio, who's been there through it all. This is the way that we think we can contend best, by sustaining a window of contention and being in the mix every year, right? I think that's a legit, smart way to try to win a World Series in Milwaukee. I think the other way, building it up, tearing it down, building it up, tearing it down. I think that's probably just as good of a bet, right? The Brewers are always going to be up against it, and it will always be really difficult for them to win a World Series. So you got to pick one of the two paths. Both are unlikely. It's hard to win a World Series either way. But the Brewers, those are the only options. They can't just spend $300 like the Dodgers, right? They can't just buy or trade for anyone. So do you want to sustain success? Do you want to build it up, tear it down, build it up, tear it down? If you would rather they build it up and tear it down, fine. That's a perfectly okay stance for you to have. It's just not the Brewers' stance. And they've been honest about that, okay? You don't have to like it, but you can't say that the Brewers are lying to you or being disingenuous to you, at least about the way they're contending. I think they could spend a little bit more than they do. And I think Mark sometimes, I think he rope-a-dopes a little bit when he's like, well, where did you want us to add? I don't know. Third base, utility infielder, starting pitching. But to say that they're completely and totally disingenuous about the way they're trying to build this thing and to contend, I think that's unfair. So I'm calling balls and strikes with Mark Attanasio. That's all. Let's take some calls. What do you say? 608-321-1670. Bill Michaels Show. Who's this? Hello. All right. So line number 2 is a bust. Let's try again. Bill Michaels Show. Who's this?
Grant Bills. How are we looking?
Vagabond John in Madison. I'm excellent. How are you today?
I am doing great. Hey, I love kicking off the 11 o'clock hour, listening to Andrew Wagner use his platform to just absolutely insult the mental health crisis that we have going on with men everywhere by comparing the Brewers situation and the commentary around it to you should use better help or betterment.
I think that's a reach.
Well, yeah, if you want to take comments out of context in a vacuum and use that as your argument, we can do it right back to you, Mr. Wagner, right? Because nobody out there, not a single person out there thinks that if you ask Mark Attanasio directly, do you want to win a World Series or not? Nobody out there has argued he would answer, no, I do not.
Correct.
Andrew Wagner just did a clear example of a red herring argument and then tried to insult Brewers fans that might have a different position than him, right? He tried to say that that's the argument. That's not the argument. The argument is, this is the question for the owner of a franchise.
Mm-hmm.
Would you rather operate a profitable entity as a business or win a championship? And I think that answer is way more complex. And I don't think that is easily answered. And I don't think it's a yes or no question. Because I think if I'm an owner, I want the profitable franchise rather than the one-time all-in, go into debt to win a championship so that our team has to move to national in 5 years.
Well,
right?
that's not what he was asked, though. He was asked about the Yelich deal. We took that comment out of context, in context, whatever. It's a statement that can stand. If you want to react to that statement, that's fine. But it was about a Yelich contract. He wasn't talking about operating a financially viable thing year over year and making money. That's not what we have made it about. Whatever we want to make it about, which is fine. It leads to good conversation on the radio. So I just want to make sure we're clear about what we're doing. That's not what he was talking about. That's not what he was asked about.
Right, and that's kind of my frustration with the leading conversation that Wagner's trying to lead when it's just not about that at all. Nobody's asking the owner, does he want to directly win a World Series or not? And I'm a little frustrated as a baseball casual that's what this has blown up into. I mean, our media people, the people writing for this team, should be better than that, right? I mean, we shouldn't have let it come to this, but I agree. It's February. It's a sports talk radio. It's what it's for. But I just heard those comments, and I'm thinking to myself, this guy is just trying to insult people to get clicks, which, to be fair, that's his job. So shout out Wags, getting the clicks this week. His argument makes no sense.
I like Wagner. I appreciate the call, Vagabond John. Nice to hear from you. Have a good weekend. Calls my show a lot in the evening. Calls the morning show, and he'll call Bill from time to time. One of our listeners in Madison on WOZN, our flagship. look, if you want a problem with Andrew Wagner, I guess that's your thing. To say that he is trivializing the mental health crisis. Andrew's been very open about his struggles with such things and therapy and, all that. So I think that's a little unfair to Andrew. Whatever, you can read it the way that you want. You're a listener. You heard it with your own ears. You have a brain. Draw your own conclusions. I think it's a little bit of a reach against Andrew. I think Brewers fans have reacted to that comment in their own selfish contexts and their own selfish arguments, right? They saw that quote and turned it into Mark should spend more. Mark's not serious about this. Mark A, B, C, Mark X, Y, Z. Like that comment was applied and taken a million different ways. When it was a question and a conversation based around a contract for a player like Christian Yelich, or previously, you could have the same question and the same conversation about paying Ryan Braun or not paying Ryan Braun. So I think Andrew's point is, well, look, this is what Mark was actually talking about, but everyone else made it about whether or not Mark actually wants to win a World Series. So Andrew then followed that conversation and said, look, if you don't think Mark wants to win a World Series, you're nuts, right? I think Andrew's chasing the story. He's been forced to chase the story, as many Brewers talkers have, because Brewers fans took that quote and ran with the story in all different directions, which is fine, right? That's what sports talk is for. But then don't get mad at Andrew for chasing the story and engaging with the story in the different arenas the Brewers fans have placed it. You know what I mean? I think that's why Andrew reacted in the way. Look, it's just a comment from an interview on Wednesday. I played it just to get us going, which I guess it served its purpose. So good producing by me. Let's all recognize I did a good job. 608-321-1670. Another caller. It's the Bill Michaels Show. Who's this?
This is Louie in Eau Claire.
What's going on, Louie? Welcome.
Hey, Grant. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday.
A couple things. I kind of have some mixed feelings on Mark there. For one, if you've noticed over the last couple of years, unless it's the Mets or the Dodgers, the uber rich who are going after the very, very best free agents, for the most part, the free agent market's pretty quiet. Even teams with more money, a lot more money, like the Cubs, aren't really spending. I mean, maybe they spend a little bit, but not a lot. And if you look earlier on in Antonasio's ownership, the Brewers did spend money on people like Jeff Zupan and Kyle Loesch and Matt Garza.
Yeah.
And maybe they incrementally helped the team a little bit, but it didn't produce any sort of real winning. I think the teams have found out that, hey, instead of going after middling free agents, let's put money into our scouting department or analytics department or international signing deal.
Developmental facilities and that sort of thing. Absolutely. And Louie, I don't want you to keep going, but that's not something that shows up when you Google the Brewers payroll. There's not a tab on that website that says, but here's what they've invested in all of those things. And I think Mark should get credit for that, but it's often left out of this conversation.
Now, one thing I do not like, though, and what comes off as cheap to me, is when you're wrestling your Cy Young pitcher for $500,000 in arbitration. It just sets the wrong tenor for the whole team. That sets the cheapness that, listen, I know the Brewers are a shoestring, budget. They don't have a big TV deal. In terms of, obviously, Mark is very, very rich, but in the scheme of sports owners, he's on the lower end of things. So I don't have a problem with him not spending big money. But when you're letting Quentin Berry get away, your first base coach of the Cubs, because you didn't want to give him a couple extra $100,000, or wrestling Corbin Burns for $500,000, that sends the wrong message to me, and I don't like that.
Sure. Okay, so that's another. So Louie, this is a great call, because typically when we talk about Mark and his appetite for winning, do you spend on players? Which should be the main thing. That's the biggest part of the conversation. Are you paying money to retain your stars, to extend your stars, to bring in other players to fill needs? Totally. But then there are these other places where an owner or an ownership group, not just in baseball, but in any sport, shows their mettle and their appetite and their dedication. Are you spending on facilities? Are you spending on a scouting department? Are you spending, as the largest scouting department or one of the larger scouting departments in the NFL? The Eagles. You know how much money they spend on scouting and analytics and the whole machine behind the players, behind the coaches, the players that you see on the field? We know how much they make. We know how much the Eagles spend there. But what about the rest of it? And it's true in baseball as well. The Brewers and Mark, they do a lot of investment in international development, facilities, right? Things like that, analytics and baseball analysis, all of that stuff. And let's be real, If you have $5 million to play with, is it better to invest that $5 million in a baseball academy in the Dominican Republic or to spend it on some hammerhead like Matt Garza? You know what I mean? Or Kyle Loesch. And also, and I've talked to Brewers people about this, and this goes back to before Matt Arnold or David Stearns were ever here in the Doug Melvin era. A lot of those signings, Kyle Loesch's, the Matt Garzas, you know why those signings were made? Is because agents went directly to Mark, or Mark got involved and was like, I need to spend, I want to spend, let's get a guy. Those signings, the worst signings that the Brewers have made, or at least the signings that we consider to be the worst, were not cases of the general manager or the baseball ops department going to Mark and saying, we want $50 million to go get Matt Garza. Can you help us? We want $30 million or whatever it was to go get Kyle Loesch. That's not what happened there. And I think Mark has learned over the years, right? Spend smarter, maybe even spend less, right? Don't just spend to spend. There are teams that can spend to spend, and there are fan bases that demand their ownership spends to spend. We talked with Felger at the Super Bowl 2 weeks ago on my show, and I'm like, you guys bear down on the Red Sox every day because John Henry and his ownership group, Fenway Sports, they have more money than God. That's a premier operation with tons of resources. They should be spending constantly, because when you reach a certain big market status with a rich ownership group, like there's a certain prestige, there's a certain expectation to spend, which seems silly. And I know we can't operate in that space because we only know the Brewers and the economics of our team, right? Spending to spend is so detrimental for the Brewers and for Mark. And some of their worst signings have not been a sharp general manager like David Stearns or Doug Melvin going to Mark and saying, can we have X dollars for this player? It's been an agent going to Mark, or Mark saying, man, I got to make something happen here, which often backfires, right? Let's take one more call and then we'll go to our break. Bill Michaels Show. Who's this?
My name shall be nameless.
That's fine.
Yeah, no. So you were talking about facilities, and I have direct information on that. They're just like they are in trade talks and everything else. They say they want to spend the money, and money isn't an issue. Well, when it comes to contracts that are up, they say, "Oh, money's not an issue," but then when they get back to it, it turns out to be that they're going with the cheapest option, not the best option that's there.
The Brewers say money is no. When do they ever say money is no option though? They never say that.
They say, well, that they're in trade talks. Just
sure.
Well, we're on Juan Soto, or we're on this, but it's implying that they're saying there's money is no option, but in reality, money is the option. Why wouldn't Hader go? Why let all these other guys go when money is the real cause?
Interesting. Okay. So I don't get the case. I appreciate the call. I don't get the impression that the Brewers ever tell us that money is no object. They're in on all of these conversations. I bet they called and asked about Juan Soto. Probably not maybe in free agency, but when he was available for trade, like, of course, they're asking around on everyone. They probably barked up the Bregman tree. It probably never got very serious, but they probably made a call. And it's weird to me how sports fans, we hold that against our general managers and our owners. Like when Goody says we're in on every conversation and the Packers are always mentioned with free agents, and we get mad about that. Oh, always the bridesmaid, never the bride. Well, is that better than the alternative of that being Ted Thompson, who never even picked up the phone to check? Same with the Brewers. And Hader, look, I know no one's going to believe me on this. I talk to Brewers people. I'm not, 40 years of coverage like Tom Hodgercourt here, but Josh Hader was not a trade about money. In fact, they saved no money making that trade. That was David Stearns, who, by the way, was out to freaking lunch at the end of his Brewers tenure. You go back and look at some of the players that they were rolling out. David Stearns was counting the days until he could leave. Okay. And I don't begrudge him for going to the Mets, a team with a bigger budget. That's his childhood team. I don't blame him. But the way that he just checked out at the end in Milwaukee, no one holds his feet to the fire for that. No one ever talks about that because we just assume the cheap overlord, Mark Attanasio, is bearing down on David, cut payroll, trade Josh Hader. No one made David Stearns trade Josh Hader. He thought that he's going off a cliff, which he was partially right about. I need to trade him now, or we're going to be left with our you-know-what in our hand, and we're going to get nothing for him. So he swung a trade that he believed to be the best possible option at the time he needed to do it. It wasn't about money. They didn't save any money with that trade, right? It was about wanting to get something, which David Stearns would tell you, by the way, you're welcome for Esteury Ruiz. because that's not a piece that you probably would have got further down the line for Hader as he continued to decline. And then that was a piece that you could use to acquire another player. So I'm sure David Stearns now would circle back and say, look, it worked out, didn't it? But everyone mentions the Hader thing. Oh, Mark's cheap. They didn't save any money by that trade. That was David Stearns who was making a move he thought would be best. And, we can relitigate the Hader trade. It's one of my favorite things to do on the radio. It's fine. It wasn't about money. And Mark is far from perfect, and I wish he would spend a little bit of his own money to go get a third baseman or another option in the infield or another starting pitcher. Absolutely, of course. I'm a fan of the Brewers. I want the owner to spend more and to be as invested as possible. I'm also realistic about the thing, and I just want fans to meet me there. I want to levy fair criticisms and accurate criticisms instead of just saying, well, they traded Hader, they're cheap. They didn't save any money by trading Hader. Mark had nothing to do. Oh, he threw his GM under the bus. I would too. Are you kidding me? You make that trade and you get one of the McGill brothers and Danielson Lamet, who's optioned 3 days later or whatever. He was gone 3 days later. I don't remember by what mechanism or by what instrument. I'm all for putting pressure on ownership. Sports radio should not exist without putting pressure on sports ownership. That's a big part of why this thing is existing. Give fans and people a voice, to demand excellence and demand, full effort and investment from their owners. But I just want to be fair about the criticism and accurate. That's all. I think that's reasonable. It doesn't mean that we can't have fun, right? And toss it around a little bit and poke fun at Mark, but I want to be accurate. Let's take a 3-minute break. We'll come back a little late. Kurt Hogg's going to join us at the bottom of this hour, so that's coming up. But I'll get to some of your texts and your comments on the live stream as well when we get back. It's the Bill Michaels Show.
Covering Wisconsin sports like a blanket. This is the Bill Michaels Show on the Wisconsin Sports Zone Radio Network.
Bill Michaels will resume in 3 minutes. Bill Michaels will resume in 2 minutes. Bill Michaels will resume in 1 minute. Bill Michaels will resume in 30 seconds.
Welcome back. How we looking? Rolling through hour number 2 of the Bill Michaels Show. My name is Grant Bills. Normally the lowly producer, not lowly, executive. Normally the executive producer of the show. Filling in for Bill. He's headed home to Cincinnati. He's opening the yearbook for the weekend. Headed back for an event for some Hall of Fame thing. I don't know if he's being inducted. He told me when we were in New Orleans, and I remember most of what he said. Bill and I spent a lot of time in the car. When we were at Radio Row or broadcasting from Radio Row, our drive into the studio, our studio for the week, the convention center, was about an hour every day. And it could be a little bit more with traffic. So every morning at 6:50, which actually isn't that bad, Bill and I got in the car, and then we had a drive in. And luckily, Bill and I aren't in the same room every day. And I don't think I have a single complaint or problem with Bill. If he has complaints or problems with me, he has not voiced them. And if he does, he probably does. I hope they're small. We get along pretty well. We spent a lot of time together in the car. So a lot of stories, a lot of things. And it was before I was fully awake. And good God, in New Orleans, you're having martinis and turtle soup, and I'm not bright-eyed and bushy. I host Evening Drive. That's when my day peaks, 4 to 6. That's normally when I host. So it's not that I'm not a morning person. I normally actually get up pretty early. I'm just not my best, most perceptive self. So I can't fully remember what Bill told me. Cincinnati, he's going to get some Skyline chili. I know that much. Which I'm glad that Bill likes it, and maybe it's delicious, but it kind of just looks like wet spaghetti with a can of chili dumped on top, which that could rip, honestly. That actually sounds pretty good now that I say it out loud. I know it doesn't look super appealing. Probably tastes awesome. In fact, I'd bet money that it tastes awesome. 608-321-1670 if you would like to join the show. Got a couple of minutes here before, and this will be a shorter segment because I want to get to Kurt Hogg on the other side. He was on my show last night, so you're going to hear that coming up next. We talked plenty about the Brewers and Mark Attanasio and some of the conversations that we've been having. We got the Brewers lineup for their opening day of spring training, I guess. Opening day, or let's say their first spring training game, which will be tomorrow. Terang, Churio, Contreras, Mitchell, Bowers, Ortiz, Frelick, Haas, and Durbin at third base. They are going to need either Durbin or Dunn to pop at third base in, I don't want to say a big way. I don't even want to say a significant way. But they are going to need one or both of those guys to fill the role of an everyday third baseman. And those are pretty big shoes to fill. That's a pretty significant role at the major league level. Everyday third baseman get a significant amount of money. That's, positional player value, position player value for an everyday infielder spot at third base. And if one of those guys doesn't work, I just wonder, and this is a loose comparison, the team is in a much different place now than they were then, but I wonder if Oliver Dunn can't get over his strikeout issue, if Durbin isn't cutting the mustard, and they have a legit need for an infield. I wonder if we could see something similar to what happened in 2021. Remember what happened in 2021? They traded, I don't remember what they traded. They acquired Willy Adames, and the deal involved Arcia, who was rewrite or something. It was a whole thing, but it was a significant trade made at a time that you typically don't see significant trades made. I think it was late May, which for the season is early, but the thought of if you don't have a third baseman worth a damn, you got to get through all of April and then all of May to even get to the point where Willy Adames was acquired, which is a mental signpost for me in a trade that was made, a little bit of precedent. It makes me nervous is all. Right? Going into the season, we've talked about this. Going into the season with those as your only options at third base and then a real lack of infield depth. Makes me nervous. Let's take a call and then we'll take a break and we'll get to Kurt Hogg on the other side. 608-321-1670. Bill Michaels Show. Who's this?
Grant Bills.
Thomas in La Crosse?
Thomas. Yes, I'm just at Festival Foods, actually. So shout out to the best grocery store, arguably in the state of Wisconsin.
I don't have beef with Festival. I just don't know that I'm prepared to crown a grocery store at this moment in time, but that's fine.
Okay. Hey, thanks for the storytelling and the imagery or whatever word you want to use of telling you about your experience. I'm sorry about bringing up past trauma or whatever, Howie's. Anyway.
Oh, what's it?
You remember? You were talking about Howie's and
that was on my show last night. You realize that you realize that, and I know you call a ton of radio shows. I think you call other stations as well. It's not the same people listening. It's not like We don't all operate out of the same building with the same exact audience every day. That's my only thing.
My apologies. Yeah. Hey, Grant, do you think the Badgers will win tomorrow? Because I'm planning to watch the game. But do we stand a pretty good shot at winning here tomorrow?
That's a good question. I think Guard earlier this week was singing the praise. That's a good call, Tom. Well, it was a call. I'm not going to go so far as to say it was a good call. It was a call. I know Guard was talking earlier this week, and maybe we can get into this in hour number 3 because we're going to do Brewers for most of the rest of the hour because Kurt Hogg, the Journal Sentinel, is going to join us next. I know Guard was singing the praises of Oregon earlier this week. It's like, yeah, they're, a little bit down in the Big Ten standings. The funny thing is the Big Ten is so freaking big now that, like, saying that they're 8th in the Big Ten isn't necessarily this massive indictment that it once would be. I mean, for Minnesota, that would be a party. For Wisconsin, that would be a disaster. But you need to remember, there's like 20 teams in the thing now. So to say that, well, they've had a down season, they're 10th in the conference, well, that means they're middling. And if they've dealt with injuries or they've dealt with, some bad luck, then they could actually be a pretty solid and proper team. And I'll try to find this quote from Greg Gard. You asked if Wisconsin's going to win. I do think they're going to win. They're at home. This team feels like they're immune to possible emotional letdowns or screw-ups just because of their experience, their age, and their depth. Right now, and I'm looking at ESPN's website, do they not have a line? Don't they have ESPN Bet now? They have ESPN Bet. Why can they not give me a line? Maybe I'm just not seeing it. God, sports gambling. I try to avoid it like the plague, and then the one time I actually look up the number, I can't find it. Well, we'll find that. We'll leave that for our number 2. Long answer short. Yes, Thomas. I think they're going to beat Oregon. We can talk more about that when noon rolls around in hour number 3. But Kurt Hogg from the Journal Sentinel is going to join us next.
Ready? This is the Bill Michaels Show on the Wisconsin Sports Zone Radio Network.
Bill Michaels will resume in 5 minutes. Bill Michaels will resume in 4 minutes. Bill Michaels will resume in 3 minutes. Bill Michaels will resume in 2 minutes. Bill Michaels will resume in 1 minute. Bill Michaels will resume in 30 seconds.
It's the Bill Michaels Show. Bill is out today. I believe he's en route to Cincinnati. If he didn't go last night, I don't think he went last night. Maybe he went last night. You don't care, probably. It doesn't really make a difference. He's in Cincinnati for the weekend. That's what you need to know. My name is Grant Bills. I'm filling in. Normally, I produce this fine program. Today, I'm filling in for Bill in his absence. Colton Bartholomew in 1 hour. Going to join us. The State Journal covers Wisconsin athletics, specifically football. He's so good, and I want to talk to him about Luke Fickell's extension. I'm told it's a formality. I'm not going to argue. I just need someone to explain how it's a formality to me. I just need someone to spell that out. I think Colton's our man, and I love Colton. Used to bump into him covering local sports in lacrosse. I put that in air quotes because I didn't really cover, but I attended. I broadcasted. Colton covered. So he's going to join us in an hour. Right now, I want to play for you, and we're going to have to break it up because it's a little bit of a longer conversation, but good friend of show, Kurt Hogg, was on with me last night, and we talked Brewers, but we started talking about the Bucks because he last night was at Pfizer filling in for Jim Owczarski as he was out in Washington. We spoke with him earlier, interviewing Chris Middleton, and that's where our conversation with Kurt started last night. Here's that talk.
Folks, I am speaking to you from the bowels of Pfizer Forum. I have no idea what I'm doing. I thought I was going to get to cover a nice Thursday night, post All-Star break. Maybe Giannis plays. This could be fun. Tune up for Kyle Kuzma's homecoming. Well, is it really homecoming for Kyle Kuzma? I don't know.
Is this his first game at home?
No. Well, they play the Wizards. They go to the Wizards after this. They play Chris.
That's right.
They play Chris coming up. So, yeah, I was filling in for our friend Jim Owczarski, my colleague at the Journal Sentinel.
Mm-hmm.
And then I checked my phone at like 10-ish a.m. this morning, and 5 people are texting me like, "Oh, buddy, guess what you're walking into tonight?" So, yeah, we're talking to Doc Rivers here in a few minutes. Let me put my official reporter voice on. Yeah, no, we'll be interrogating Doc Rivers in a few minutes.
Are you gonna ask about this? Are you gonna try to get some info on this, or are you just gonna kind of fulfill your requirement tonight?
Look, one of my things, you're right, on the Brewers beat is I like it when other people are involved and other people ask questions. You don't have to, but it's helpful when the whole group is participating.
Yeah.
Now, in an event like this, where say, I don't know, who's the Brewers comparison if Garrett Mitchell or someone had gotten suspended like that, you're probably going to have like the beat mainstays take charge. That's generally protocol, but like I don't know. I'll feel it out. I feel like I got some questions up my sleeve in case I get called upon to get a couple outs in the 7th inning or something.
Would help assert your dominance right away and establish yourself in the locker room, from the clubhouse to locker room. By the way, can you let me know? We could do 60 seconds on this. I think I may have committed a journalistic cardinal sin at the Badger game the other night, or so Zach Heilprin tells me, our sports director.
Okay.
I asked Greg Gard to tell me about his decisions, like how can you play Steven Crowell and Nolan Winter together, or when do you need to stagger them, right? And I closed my question, as I would on the show, by telling him, tell me about that. And Zach tells me the next day, no, that's bad. Am I coercing an answer, or is Zach messing with me?
No, it could have been worse. If it's just a talk about,
sure,
then I would be on here lighting you up. You would be getting a new one from me right now. But I think finishing, you ask a full question, you ask this and that and that and this, and they say, just, can you tell me about that?
Yeah, talk about that. Tell me about that.
I think tell me about that is also different than talk about.
I don't remember what I said, which is why I'm leaving it open-ended here.
Can you talk about the third quarter? Like, what kind of question is that? Give me your credential if you do that.
That's a classic McAlvey. McAlvey asks questions without asking questions. He just gets the ball rolling. It's like he drops the puck on the ice and off we go.
Well, you wonder where I learned everything from. I'm really bad, but I still learned it from Adam. I just can't do it.
Interesting. So people are fired up about Bob Nightingale because he took one little comment from Mark. I still think the comment, like if Brewers fans are upset about it, even within context, it's kind of weird and Brewers fans don't have to like it. But what did you make of that comment, both by itself and then within context?
Yeah, well, okay. I feel like this news cycle has died down, right? So I'm coming on here 48 hours after it was, at its heat.
Lots of time to think for you.
People died. So, yeah, I think everyone's got their take. So what my take is probably doesn't matter, but I'm going to give it to you anyway.
I want it.
It was just, the whole thing was weird. Is that okay to say?
That's fine.
I thought, honestly, it wasn't even that specific comment, the one about the World Series or the summer of passion.
Why did he have to use the word passion? He didn't need passion. He didn't need to say that.
No, look, it was sometimes when the owner talks, he'll fumble around and work through different ideas in his head before he gets to the ultimate thought. And that definitely happened here.
Yeah.
I thought there were other answers in there that were more confounding or confusing or that I would have asked a follow-up to. I mean, he basically said the reason they didn't sign anyone this offseason was the front office. And, you can see some truth in that for sure. The Brewers front office deemed that the players that were available, on this mid to lower level veteran market, were not worth the money that they were getting relative to, the surplus value you get from Caleb Durbin, Oliver Dunn.
Sure.
They just have those guys as a better combo and cheaper. So they didn't sign the Paul DeYoungs of the world. But they still didn't spend any money. Front offices in baseball, especially on competing teams, would like to acquire good players. So that one was a bit confusing to me, and I would have asked to follow up. And maybe when opening day comes around, we'll all circle back to this discourse. But I feel like everyone's got their takes on it, and there was enough clarity offered by Andrew Wagner, friend of the show, of course.
He's all over it.
I'm assuming he's a friend of the show. I don't.
Yeah, he would never act friendly, but he contributes. Yeah,
he would not acknowledge himself as a friend of the show. No. Unlike, however, I would wear a badge. If you sent me a badge that said "Friend of the Wisco Sports Show," I would need Onabom to sign it, and then I would wear it.
Yeah, great. Yeah. I think even if Durbin or Dunn works out at third, best case scenario, right? Hoskins bounces back, Terang's great, Ortiz plays a great short, and Oliver Dunn hits at third. They still need some depth. Injuries happen. It's a long season. What if Terang?
That's my concern.
What if he takes a fastball off the pinky? What are we going to do?
You're one injury to Ortiz or Terang away from. Instead of needing one of Dunn or Durbin to work out, you need both of them to work out, and probably Andrew Monasterio too, or someone else in that mix. Because Tyler Black's probably not going to play third base.
He's at first, right? They said they're just working him out at first or mostly first.
And that's not a surprise. That's if you've paid attention to where he's played in the minor leagues or where he played in the big leagues last year, not a surprise. So that's where the Brewers are at. I thought we were talking Badger basketball.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you about next because you're an alum.
Yes.
Have you been given the opportunity to go cover a Badger game? I feel like that's more in your wheelhouse.
I have not. Also, I don't know if I want to. I've said this in the past. The one team or program I don't want to or could never cover is the Badgers. And I'm putting this on the record in public. Because I went there, I just want to root for the school I went to. It's as simple as that. And if you're covering the team, you got to be Mr. Objective Man and throw your biases out the window.
Yeah, like me.
Frankly, you're an established clubhouse presence. You're the exception to the rule.
I covered a game. I covered the game on Tuesday night. I didn't cover the game. I covered it.
We could get into all the details and the unwritten rules of capital J journalism.
Of course.
Maybe we'll say it for a different day. No, Grant, I love watching this Badgers team. I realized during the Illinois game, which again you were covering, you were there. You really got a good feel, the smell of the arena, the smell of the team.
Walked because my show ended at 6. The game started at 7:30. I walked both levels of the concourse and I positioned myself to watch shoot around at both ends. I was trying to gather a vibe and gather an energy. Yes,
that's right. Sorry if it's getting loud in here. They just turned the bass up apparently for a warm up.
No, you sound great.
I was watching that game and I think there was a point in the second half, they're up 8 going into immediate timeout or something. Someone's going to the line. And I caught myself texting a friend Badgers are playing okay tonight. And then I'm like, wait a second. They're up 8 over a pretty good Illinois team, even though they were down a couple guys and they were a little sick. But that team's still pretty good. And
yeah.
The metrics love them too. I'm like, wait a second. Do I really? I must think this team is amazing. If I'm nitpicking a pretty dang good performance. And then the thing is, I was right. They were only playing okay. And then they turned it on and they absolutely ran these guys out of the gym and they made a top 6 pick in the draft look like he belongs in the Horizon League or something like that.
Wow.
I don't know, Grant. The hopes are up. It's dangerous.
It is dangerous. I'm really excited to see because their schedule is so much easier than the teams above them in the current Big Ten standings. I got my hopes up for a Big Ten regular season title. I haven't even started to think about the postseason yet. I'm too preoccupied. I want to ban.
Yeah, no, I don't care about the Big Ten tournament, frankly. Give me the regular season title. I think that one matters more in my mind. Maybe it's because that's the one the Badgers have won 3 times in the past. I don't know, 8 years or decade or whatever. And they don't really win the Big Ten tournament as much. So I'm gonna claim that.
We're gonna claim the thing that we can claim. Yeah.
Right. You're right. It's like wild card banners.
Yeah.
Hang them if you got them.
Hang them if you got them. Oh my God. Look, to wrap up with a Brewers thought, Brewers fans, if that quote ticked you off, this is what I said yesterday to try to calm the seas a little bit. What Mark is saying, is it my job to win a World Series or is it my job to basically what he's saying, to put a good team on the field to give us something to watch and to follow into September? Aren't those goals, they coincide, right? They've decided the best way to contend for a World Series is to give us a summer of passion every year. So I know he said it was kind of messy, but can't we wrap our arms around that?
Yeah, Mark, the passion and entertainment summer was phrased in an awkward way, like we've said.
It was.
But the reality is, if you know what he meant, which this is reading a little between the lines, but what he meant is the thing they've said year after year after year. And I think you got at this on your show yesterday, which is this is the way they want to win a World Series and compete, is to have a chance every year. And that's basically what he meant. We're you can come to the ballpark and you're having a good time because the team is good. I don't think he meant it from you can go do X golf.
Yeah.
Or
I agree.
The concessions are good. That's part of the whole process, but I think ultimately what he was getting at was some level of competing year in, year out. And again, look, that's not a good thing to say as an owner. That's not a good quote in any context. He was fumbling around a little bit, but also he does want to win. I think if you had conversations with him or you know him or you just kind of talk to people around the team, he's very competitive, probably more. Can't really compare it to other owners in the league because I don't know other owners in the league, but I would say he's certainly at least on par with where most of them are. Now, you could have a whole discussion about, well, if he was, wouldn't he open his pocketbooks a little more? And to which I would say touche, because that's exactly my thought too.
Yeah.
But there's still a competitive nature, especially when that ball is thrown.
And the bar's really been raised for us Brewers fans. Like, they just won the division. They won 90-plus games. They should have won a playoff series, whatever. And we got people threatening to cancel their season tickets because the owner said something clunky. You know what I mean? Like, think of how far we've come in this era of Brewers baseball. Part of that is the expanded postseason, but this team knows how to contend year in and year out. It's a good thing.
Sure, yeah. And again, I think there was other parts of those interviews that I would think about and look into more than this quote that, look, it was used at least somewhat out of context. Let's put it that way.
It was still said. My favorite quote was, well, you can always add starting pitching, but that's expensive. It's like, okay, I probably would have kept that one to myself too. That was probably my favorite quote. And by favorite, I mean like maybe the most twisted one that fans could complain about. Well, you got a game to cover. Get in there. Get us some scoops. Get us the latest on the Bobby Portis situation. Kurt, I appreciate the time. It's a delight, as always.
That's right. NBA investigative man, me.
Ready? This is the Bill Michaels Show on the Wisconsin Sports Zone Radio Network.
Bill Michaels will resume in 3 minutes. Bill Michaels will resume in 2 minutes. Bill Michaels will resume in 1 minute. I can't do it in 30 seconds.
Welcome back, Bill Michaels Show, wrapping up hour number 2. The show is flying by. And you know what? Between you and me, I won't tell this to Bill, I think the show goes a lot faster than the host than it does for the producer. Because normally, Bill's in Cincinnati this weekend, by the way. He's headed down there for an event, so that's why I'm filling in. I'm normally producing this show. And there will be days where the show flies by. Monday or Tuesday after a Packer game, I mean, we come in, Bill gives his thought, I give a thought, callers call in, give their thoughts. We're riled up about a win or a loss. Eric Brenchek drops in. Oh, look, the film, X's and O's. Oh, it's 1 o'clock. Here comes Mike Clemens, and the show's done. And the show flies by. And then there's days where there's not really a ton going on. And maybe the Bucks have played a game or Badgers basketball has played a game and a segment or two on that. But I'm like, oh man, I feel like I have not done my job as producer of this program. I haven't booked enough guests. I haven't come up with enough segments. I don't have enough audio, whatever it is. And then Bill at 12:50 or 12:55 or 1 o'clock, man, I can't believe 3 hours down. I can't believe the show's flying. Grant, isn't the show flying today? And I was like, yeah. Mm-hmm. But back here in the studio, I'm like, this is crawling. Like, I feel like I'm not doing my job. But I think when you're hosting, when you're talking, and this is the way that Bill always feels, the show's flying by. It is flying by. Appreciate Kurt Hogg. That was not live. That was from my show last night, but really, really good on the Brewers and some further analysis and further discussion on those comments from Mark Attanasio. And we don't need to belabor them, but I know a lot of people got riled up. And it's funny, earlier this week, we got a lot of comments on the live stream, and I got this on my show too. Would you stop talking about Jair? Oh my God, it's not Packers season. Why are you talking about the Packers? Can you guys get off of it? And then the last 2 days, I've got comments on Bill's live stream and on my show. Guys, I'm sick of the Mark thing. Can we talk Packers? Can't please everyone. No one can ever be pleased. I have a Badgers thought when we come back, maybe a couple more Brewers thoughts. And if at any point you want to call in and talk literally about anything, it's a wide open week with a bunch going on. Hockey, baseball, Badgers, Packers, Brewers, so many different things to discuss. So the phone lines are wide open if you want to call. Grab one of those lines. You don't have to wait very long. We'll be right on the other side of this 2-minute break. 608-321-1670. Call or text. Hour number 3, Colton Bartholomew, State Journal, going to join us to talk Badgers football and Luke Fickell's extension. Huh? Yeah, that's coming up this hour. Stick around. Well, the Bucks were without Bobby Portis last night. He started his 25-game suspension for violating the NBA's anti-drug policy. They overcame the first game back from the All-Star break. Turner Jones got from a castrated health coach. But understands the no fly the team has without Portis for the rest of the regular season is really important. News like that. We know that we got a hold of him. And make us a better team because we'll have to find a way out. Back in action tonight, they try to face Washington, expected to be the Wizards' debut of former Bucks star Chris Middleton. Milwaukee is at 6, turning the 11th ranked Badgers. They're going to be back in tomorrow as they welcome Oregon to the Kohl Center. Wisconsin's won 5 in a row.
Wisconsin strong. You may know Rural Mutual Insurance as the #1 farm insurer, but did you know they also offer competitive home, auto, business, and life insurance? They make it convenient to bundle your insurance while saving you time and money. Visit ruralmutual.com to learn more.
Rural Mutual Insurance, keeping Wisconsin strong.
Well, the Brewers will open up Cactus League play tomorrow against the Reds. Manager Pat Murphy unveiled the lineup this morning. Includes Bryce Terang leading off with Jackson Turio and William Contreras following him. And the NFL Combine gets going in Indianapolis next week. Packers GM Brian Gutekunst slated to speak on Tuesday. With this Wisconsin Sports Zone Network update, I'm Zach Heil, printed.
If you know what he meant, which this is reading a little between the lines, but what he meant is the thing they've said year after year after year. And I think you got at this on your show yesterday, which is this is the way they want to to win a World Series and compete is to have a chance every year. And that's basically what he meant. We're like, you can come to the ballpark and you're having a good time because the team is good. I don't think he meant it from like you can go do X golf.
Yeah.
Or
I agree.
the concessions are good. Like that's part of the whole process. But I think ultimately what he was getting at was some level of competing year in, year out. And again, look, that's not a good thing to say as an owner. That's not a good quote in any context. He was fumbling around a little bit, but like also he does want to win. I think if you had conversations with him or you know him or like you just kind of talk to people around the team, he's very competitive. Probably more, can't really compare it to other owners in the league because I don't know other owners in the league, but I would say he's certainly at least like on par with where most of them are. Now, you could have a whole discussion about, well, if he was, wouldn't he open his pocketbooks a little more? And to which I would say touche, because that's exactly my thought too.
Yeah.
But like, there's still a competitive nature, especially when that ball is thrown.
That's Kurt Hogg. That's the comment, I think, from that interview, which is about 15 minutes long. I think that was my favorite comment because that's Kurt really getting down to the heart of the matter. The quote that got everyone riled up: is my job to win a World Series, or is my job to provide a summer of entertainment and passion? Which, by the way, what a ridiculous. Forget what the quote means. Just talk about the quote, engage with the quote directly in the word choice directly. I love that Mark's brain and mouth went to summer of passion, as if we're talking about like 1969 and some, cultural sea change in music and literature. A summer of passion. Mark, I love my baseball team. I love going to games and I love a tailgate. Summer of passion. That's reserved for, summer of 69. I also, for people my age, and if you are close to my age, maybe this will resonate with you. I find the summer of 2021 to be a bit of an homage to the summer of 69, if you will. Coming out of the pandemic, kind of getting back to normal life. Summer of 2021 was pretty bitchin'. Lots of good music. The Bucks winning the title, right? That really put some rose-colored glasses over my eyes when thinking about the year 2021. But summer of passion. What Kurt is saying is, hey, here's what Mark meant, right? Is it his job to go all in to win a World Series in any particular year, or is it to try to put the best product on the field every single summer so Brewers fans don't go without? And while that's not what he said, and we are helping him out a little bit by connecting those dots, we're doing the owner a favor, and we're giving him a little lip service when we say, well, he said this, but what he really meant is this, which I understand. We're carrying water a little bit for the owner when we translate his words to something that makes him sound a little bit better and a little bit smarter. But why I'm so comfortable paying that lip service and building that bridge on behalf of the Brewers owner, Mark Attanasio, is because we have year after year after year of precedent and evidence. We have so much evidence that the Brewers think the best way to win a World Series is to contend every year. Now, that doesn't mean they're never probably going to go all in to get a rental like Sabathia or to bring in. Now, they'll build around the edges. We'll go get Moustakas or we'll go get, right, guys like that. But they've decided the best way to try to win a World Series is to be in it every year. You don't have to like that. That's up to you. If you prefer them to do the thing the Orioles did or the thing that the Royals did, fine. As a sports talk radio host, I kind of like this way because it means the team is in the mix every year. It gives us something to talk about, and it gives me a reason to watch the Brewers with real ramifications. Maybe you think they could have a slightly better chance to win a World Series by doing it the other way. I would say that advantage is slight and small. And I had a caller on my show last night say, well, would you rather, experience the run that the Brewers are experiencing? Would you rather get this, or would you rather have what the Royals have had, which is a lot of bad, but the World Series mixed in there? Okay, if you can guarantee me a World Series, I'll take a World Series. The nightmare is you do what the Royals did or you do what the Orioles are trying to do, and you don't end up with anything to show for it. You know what I mean? And I guess you could say, well, the fun that we had along the way and the memories, but you have a long rebuild going in, a long rebuild coming out. And if those rebuild periods aren't surrounding a team that, hell, at least makes a World Series or even wins it, that strategy, I don't know the fans are going to be so down with that. If you could guarantee me a World Series, well, then yeah, I'd do it that way. Of course, because the Brewers need to win one. But the problem is you can't guarantee it. So you're saying, would you rather flip a coin on a 3-year window, or would you rather be in the mix for 5 or 6 years and flip a coin? I would rather have more good baseball. You don't have to agree. That's just my 2 cents. And that's kind of what Mark's getting at. I understand carrying a little bit of water, translating his words, but they've been so transparent and so clear about the way they're going about this thing. I think it's fair, and I don't think I'm shilling for an organization when I translate those words to better highlight what he's saying, the spirit of what he's saying. 608-321-1670. It's the Bill Michaels Show. Let's take a call. Who's this?
This is Kevin from Central Wisconsin.
Hey, what's going on, Kevin? Where in Central Wisconsin? Unless you don't want to say. You don't have to dox yourself.
Right in Central Wisconsin. It's pretty close to Stevens Point.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, thanks for listening. What's up?
Are you coming up next weekend? Next weekend with Bill?
For the Bach run, I am not. No.
Oh.
I know.
Grant, you're missing it.
I know.
So
is it just like a big 5K? So I know very little about it. Is it just like a 5K marathon? What's the deal?
Just a 5K. They run and come back, and you got people that are, that doesn't matter how warm it is or how cold it is. They're in tank tops and shorts and running, and it's a lot of people, and it's pretty cool watching. So
and then enjoy.
I'd rather be the spectator, and some of those runners, they don't drink. They get free drinks and stuff like that.
Yeah.
As a spectator, it's the best because then you get the free drinks because some of those guys are so watching their body and watch what they put in there that
so you get their
they
drinks.
Just give those away.
Well, they have a recovery window. Is Belts going to be open?
No, I don't think Belts is going to be open for a while yet.
That's okay. That's all right. All right. So I'll come back in the summer and get some ice cream. Well, what's going on? What do you think?
Well, okay. So the last couple of days, I've been trying to absorb everybody's opinions, and I've been a Brewer fan. I mean, I love baseball, just period.
Okay.
And I didn't take Mark's words the wrong way. They probably were trying to make deals, but how many times have you seen it where they could be in the mix for the deal, but they're going to go to another place just because it's New York or it's the Dodgers or it's Houston? They've won those World Series and they've been there. And I mean, they do they have to change the culture somehow to bring these guys in? They might have to. But, it's so fun listening to the Brewer games in the summertime, and they're relevant. They're in every game. They're in the they're in the process of being, winning the division, getting the playoffs.
Yeah. Playing good, meaningful baseball. Yes.
And one of these times they're gonna hit it and they're gonna make it. And they're gonna be the lowest salary team in the World Series. But you're still going to have those haters out there, and they're going to still complain. It's like, just relax, people. Just do the Aaron Rodgers RELAX and let the chips fall where they fall. And one of these times, it's going to hit. The money's going to come in, and maybe they can bring some of these other guys, to come in.
Yeah.
I've loved what Murph has done the last year. And, he's changed the culture of the team. They brought back old school baseball, and that's what I love is old school baseball.
Well, and they're going to have to play a lot more of that this summer. I appreciate the call. Enjoy the Bach run next weekend or enjoy spectating. They're going to need more old school baseball this year, the way the roster is shaping up, because they're going to lose a lot of pop losing Adames. They hit more home runs than people give them credit for last year. I keep bringing this up on my show. We talk about last year's Brewers like they were the slapdash, hit and run butcher boy play. Like the last team hit home runs. It's not like they bunted and stole bases every single night and that's how they won. Now they did some of that stuff and that was great and it's entertaining and I enjoy it. But they knocked the ball around the yard quite a bit too. And they're going to have to find a way to do enough of that this year. I have my concerns. But as the roster stands right now, the lack of production, the lack of pop that they lost with Adames, and between Terang and Frelick and Durbin and Ortiz, I just don't know if there's enough pop there. They're going to have to find some. They're going to have to hope that Garrett Mitchell figures out his issue with high fastballs and can continue to drive the ball. That's an area, but you're also going to have to hope that he stays healthy, right? There's a lot of ifs. There's a lot of question marks, a little too many for my liking. It's a good call, Kevin. And I tend to agree. It's just my opinion. I think if they keep playing good baseball like this, they keep identifying talent, developing good pitching, doing the right things, I think they'll eventually break through. I can't guarantee you that. Just like I can't guarantee that they'd win anything if they were to tear it all down and go all in for a 2 or 3 year period. You can't know. You can't guarantee anything. I think if they keep this up at some point, they're going to break through. Maybe that's blue and gold colored glasses, but I do believe that. Let's take another call. 608-321-1670. Wisco Sports. I did it. Bill Michaels Show. Who's this?
Hey, Grant, it's Ed.
Hey, Ed. What's going on?
Hey, well, I like the last caller. I'm kind of the same ilk as him, thinking, it's just right now we got to kind of let it all play out, like he said. I mean, baseball is such a long season, ebbs and flows, injuries. People come and people go, from up and down the farm system. I think we just got to be patient and not read so much into what the owner is trying to project for the future. Because how many times have we seen other teams go all in on, look at the Orioles. They went all in on Burns. They didn't really get as far, and now Burns is gone.
The Orioles have gone all in. The Royals went all in. And Ed, I think that's a fine strategy. But those organizations, the Padres might end up in this bucket too, are an example of, look, you can do it the other way, and there's no guarantee it works that way either. You could still prefer, you could still want him to do it that way, but you have to recognize that it's no more a guarantee that you're going to get to or win a World Series than the way that the Brewers are doing it.
Right. And an optimistic approach to this season is, look what division we're in. We have probably one of, I'm not going to say the weakest division,
so
but
winnable.
definitely winnable. So I want to sit back and kind of just take that. I want to get to some games finally this year. I didn't go see them at all last year, and I really feel bad that I didn't. I used to go like 4 or 5 games a year. So this year I'm going to really go. And I really get tired of people saying I'm not going to make that trip to Milwaukee if this is the kind of team that we're going to keep putting out on the field. Well, how many games did we win last year?
Well, that's the thing. Like, we've got a lot of those comments, a lot of those calls this week. It's like, well, I've had it.
Yeah.
I'm not going to go, or I'm going to cancel my season tickets. It's like, okay, so the owner made a little bit of a faux pas. And some of his other comments on spending were actually worse than the one about the Summer of Passion. Okay, look at the results. You know what I mean? Like, you're not going to go to games as a matter of principle. You can do whatever you want. You can fan however you want. It just seems a little silly to me. This team's as good over an extended period of time, quite literally, as they ever have been in their history before.
Hey, we've dealt with owners making faux pas. Former Green Bay Packers CEO, come on. We haven't had people make faux pas before. You kind of scratch your head and shake it around like you're ready to turn. You're just ready to spit bullets at the guy. You just went, what are you talking about? Yeah. We are hard-paying, blue-collar Wisconsinites that want a product on the field. Packers, Badgers, football, Brewer baseball, Bucks basketball. We want a winner, and I know they want a winner. They're not. Antonacio wants a winner. If anybody knows or watches him I've seen him on TV before. He's very passionate about the sport. I'm not even worried about it. Yeah, I'm moving on. I'm going to turn the page. I'm ready for some warmer weather this weekend, but, break out the shorts and maybe go and hit a few golf balls. Take care, buddy. It's good to hear your voice.
You too, Ed. I appreciate it. It's been a little bit since you've called any of our shows. There's a couple folks on the live stream pushing back on the idea that the Brewers will break through at some point, right? And Steven says here, they're not going to break through. 50 years I've been waiting for that. How on earth can you think that? Nothing is changing for the better. I don't care about the last 40 years, right? Don't tell me about the 80s and the 90s, the late 80s and the 90s and the 2000s when they didn't do anything. It's not the same league. It's not the same ownership. It's not the same team, right? Now you can say, well, since 2018 when this thing got started, I know they've been winning games, but I don't ever think that will amount to anything. Fine, you could feel that way. I've just seen too much since the Brewers have started this strategy. I've seen too many teams like the Diamondbacks break through, right? Or the Phillies when no one expected. Like, there's just so many teams that have done the thing that the Brewers are trying to do. The Braves in 2021. Now, those teams were also really good, but I also think the Brewers have had some pretty darn good teams. Maybe not the best, maybe not on the level of the Dodgers, but nobody thought that the Mets or the Brewers were on the same level as the Phillies last year, and the Phillies kind of go meekly into the night in round number 2. They didn't even make the CS. So if you don't think the strategy is the right one, and you wish the Brewers would go about it differently, fine. But don't tell me about the 90s and the 2000s. They'll never get there. They've been trying forever. They weren't even at the party, let alone in line outside the building. They weren't. don't use those years. Don't throw those years in my face as evidence. Those years mean nothing to me. I want to talk about the way they're operating now with this ownership group, with this front office, with the way that they develop players. Yeah, I think if they keep going like this, eventually, yeah, they'll break through. I do. You don't have to agree. It's fine. I just think they are operating with too many good processes in place to at some point not break through. Just my point of view. You don't have to agree. I don't care about the late 80s, the 90s, the 2000s. They're wandering in the wilderness. That means nothing to me. That means very little to me. So we can continue this next. I also have some Badgers thoughts, Badgers basketball, and then Colton Bartholomew, the State Journal, going to join us to talk about Luke Fickell's extension. That's coming up at 12:30. Really excited to connect with Colton. More of the Bill Michaels Show coming up next.
This is the Bill Michaels Show on the Wisconsin Sports Zone Radio Network.
You can accomplish quite a lot in 6 years. You go from changing diapers to dropping your child off at school. College, you can get a bachelor's and a master's degree, and you can take up to 6 years to pay off your brand new Pella windows and doors at 0% interest. Hi, it's Gina Della from Pella. With Pella Windows and Doors of Wisconsin, you get so much more than stunning windows and doors. Well, quality can manufactures, sells, installs, and services every product. A 10-year labor warranty is always included, so your windows and doors are secure for years to come. Our expert installers are available year-round and can install in as little as a day. If something ever goes wrong, Pella will handle it ASAP because you work with the same team from start to finish. Oh my gosh, why wait? Get the Pella experience in this incredible deal. 0% interest up to 6 years on brand new Pella windows and doors. Set your free at-home consultation today at PellaWI.com.
Bill Michaels will resume in 30 seconds.
I mean, Gilly and I were talking about it a little bit, knowing we hadn't really beat them since we've been here. So we knew this might be our last opportunity to get them. So we had to go out and get the win. So
for sure.
No,
Not one time.
1-9 maybe. I think.
Yeah. I got to bring that up.
I think just I had to look myself in the mirror a little bit and come back and just become a little bit of a different player. And like I said earlier, credit to my teammates and coaches being on me a little bit because they know I can take it and just listen to them. And it's all worked out so far. So.
That's Stephen Crowell on Tuesday night after they beat Illinois, and that little exchange that you heard at the end of the second, or the first answer there. So at the table was Carter Gilmore, Stephen Crowell, and John Tanji. Crowell and Gilmore have been here forever. So they have all of this history. That was the first time they'd beaten Illinois in 9 tries. Brad Underwood and the Fighting Illini were 9-0 in their last 9 against Wisconsin. So they ask Gilmore and Crowell at this press conference, like, hey, how does it feel to finally get them? They'd never beaten Illinois before their entire career at Wisconsin. So basically, this was your last crack, unless maybe you see them in the Big Ten tournament or something, but this is your last guaranteed crack to beat this team. And I think Tanjay was unfamiliar with the history, and they're explaining, yeah, I think it's 9 straight losses, and Tanjay's like, holy smokes, made a little bit of a face. And I think there was an example of this either earlier this year or last year. Was it Tanjay when asked about or talking about the 2014, 2015 teams? Yeah, it was after the Arizona game when they were talking about the team that was being honored, either before or after the Arizona game, and they're talking about the banner, bringing those guys back and honoring them. And I think it was Tanjay referred to them as the Sweet 16 team, right? And everyone's like, man, a little bit more than that, right? That's back-to-back Final Fours. So it's kind of funny anytime you add a player like Tanjay into this mix. It's his first year at Wisconsin. And then here's Crowell and Gilmore, who've been here forever and have been indoctrinated not only in Wisconsin lore for the 4 years that they've been there, but going back right into recent and even, ancient by some standards history. There's just kind of a funny comment and a funny exchange. I have a comment or two from Greg Gard about Oregon. I'll play those, and then we're going to get to a call here before we get to our break, and we're going to get to Colton Bartholomew after 12:30. Luke Fickell was extended, and I've been told that it's a formality by smart basketball people. And I just need that explained to me. That's it. I need someone to explain to me that formality and why it's a formality and why the way that it is. But we got a call earlier from Thomas who asked, do you think Wisconsin's going to beat Oregon tomorrow? I do, because I think this Wisconsin team is friggin' good. But I also think Oregon is a little underrated. And if you listen to Greg Gard, right, like he would tell you the same thing. He said Oregon is a great team, doesn't care about their record, which has been about the midway point in the Big Ten standings.
Like I said, it's a good team. I think I don't get caught up in records. I look at who they played and what they've done, and you just watch them for a while. They're a very talented team.
He also says they're playing better of late, which I will have to check here. I want to see who they've played recently.
They're a really good team. I think you look at their record and say, well, they're 8-8 or whatever in the league, but they started 14 or 15-0. Beat some really good teams, beat Alabama, beat San Diego State. You go through the list, and now it looks like they're playing better like they did earlier in the year. So we'll definitely have our hands full and prep here today and tomorrow for them.
So their early season, they started 9-0, and they peaked, I suppose, at 15-2 before they started losing. But that beginning portion of their schedule was wins over UC Riverside, Montana, Portland, Troy, Oregon State, Texas A&M, San Diego State, Bama, USC. Then they lost at home to UCLA, beat Stephen F., beat Stanford, beat Weber State, lost to Illinois, and then beat Maryland, Ohio State, Penn State. That's when they peaked at 15-2. That's a good team. And since then, they have lost, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. They lost 6 of 7, including losses to Purdue, at Minnesota, at UCLA, home against Nebraska, which is tough. Going to Nebraska, that's a difficult place to play, but losing to Nebraska at home is tough. Then losing back-to-back at Michigan and at Michigan State. Recently, they've won 3 in a row over Rutgers, Northwestern, and Iowa. This is a solid team. And 8th in the Big Ten standings is not the indictment that it once was, because this team has 20 freaking teams, or this conference has 20 freaking teams in it. He says a reason that Oregon is so good. One final comment from Greg Gard. I appreciate Zach sending these over so we can listen to it. They don't just rely on one guy.
I mean, he doesn't score, and they still score 80. So, you look at, sometimes they ask that about Steve Crowell for us. Well, he didn't score very much. Well, yeah, but we scored 85. So there's other things and other components that go into making their team good, and a team that can still score 80 when you have your point guard not scoring at all, obviously tells you the depth and the talent of the rest of the guys.
So I'm excited for tomorrow. That feels like a legit win. I tweeted a little bit ago, by the way, because the Wisconsin basketball Twitter account posted a graphic of Greg Gard. He's been named to the Naismith Trophy or the Naismith Coach of the Year trophy watch list, right? He's one of the, and he should be, considering preseason expectations and what he was able to do in the transfer portal, right? Examples of player development within the program, all these things. And I quote tweeted and said, another rough day for the Fire Guard crowd. Like, you're just running out of things if you don't like Greg Gard. And there's a reply to this. It's from John in Rhinelander. It says, let's see how far March goes before we start this. No. Look, if college basketball to you is only about March Madness, fine. That's the way that you consume the sport. That's the way that you place value on the sport and assign value to games. Fine. Do that if you want. I just think it's insane in the middle of a college basketball regular season in the Big Ten, in a legit-ass conference with legit-ass teams and legendary coaches. Matt Painter is so good, and Tom Izzo is so good. And there's others, but I'm not going to go up and down the list. Like, this is a legit conference. You watched last Saturday's game? That game was awesome. That game on CBS with Ian Eagle and Raftery, and the graphics were awesome, and it was at Mackey, and the crowd was lit. Like, I cannot understand. And this is a me problem, right? I cannot understand folks who sit on their hands during a season in which a team is wildly overperforming expectations. Look at all this talent. Look at all this depth. Look at all this development. Look at this Badger team. I just can't understand someone sitting through these awesome games, especially now this time of year. We're into matinees on Saturdays and Sundays on CBS, on the big networks. It's great. I don't understand how someone sits through this and goes, we'll see what happens in March. You're just missing out to me. And it's not like these regular season games are meaningless. They crown a conference championship and hang a banner. The Badgers are firmly in the mix for that. They have the easiest schedule of the teams remaining: Michigan, Michigan State, and Purdue. And they get an opportunity to go to the Breslin Center and beat a team. Otherwise, they host Oregon, they host Washington, bottom of the Big Ten. They go to Penn State, or they host Penn State, bottom of the Big Ten. They go to Minnesota. Like, their schedule is so winnable. Guys, they're in the mix. So I just don't understand, and it's a me problem. Again, it's the way that I fan relative to the way that you fan. I just don't understand how you can sit through what we're sitting through right now and be like, see what happens in March. I don't understand that approach. Let's take a call quickly, and then we'll go to break, get to Colton Bartholomew. It's the Bill Michaels Show. Who's this?
Mr. Slow Cooker.
Hey, Dave from Monona. How's it going?
Oh, my God, these fans, Kevin. No, we don't sit back and just watch Kevin. These peanut butter and jelly Brewer fans. Are you kidding me? I'd rather get to the playoffs every year. At least you're there. As a Cub fan, you're spending, hey, Kevin and the other peanut butter and jelly fans, would you rather spend $250 million every year and suck?
Yeah.
Like the Cubs do?
Yeah.
The Cubs spend the money because they got management. They got 38,000. I told Cub fans, until we boycott, nothing's going to change. So you peanut butter and jelly fans who go to the Brewers every year, enjoy getting there. Same with Greg Gard. Give me two guys that are going to get there. Yes, and coaches are judges on March, but you got to get there first. And if you're not getting there, like Cub fans, where we suck, so ask yourself, you pathetic Brewer fans, if I gave you $200 million a year, would that make you happy? Or spend $100 million a year and keep getting there?
Yeah.
God, it's just like, are you kidding me? As far as I have to mention, seriously, it's a formality to give Batgirl an extension.
Oh, Fickle? Yeah, I'm excited. Yeah. I'm excited to hear Colton explain this coming up next, because he got an extension.
No matter what
all the Badger people are like, this is a formality. It's no big deal. I need to hear that explanation.
BS. It's not a formality. They're just going to tell you that because of recruiting and all the business side. It's not a formality. I mean, the last 2 years, it's going to be another bad year. All that's going to do is make the buyout even worse when he sucks again this year. No, don't let anybody fool you. I've been around this town for 40 years. It's not a formality. Look, and if anybody should be getting an extension, is Greg Gard, who's been there, done it, and is a community member. Ask yourself, all you football fans, what the hell has Luke Batgirl done in the community? You want that clown around here a couple more years? No. Give me Greg Gard any day of the week. But Yeah, Brewer fans, I'll give you $100 million extra a year, buddy. You guys could not make the playoffs. Bunch of clowns.
So that's an excellent call, Dave. And so the buyout is the part that has been explained to me as a formality. Like, this doesn't really change how much the Badgers are on the hook for on a sizable level, right? Sizable is relative to everyone's, P of V, of course. That to me, I think, is the formality part, is it doesn't really change the buyout details too much. But also, like, why'd you have to do it? That's another thing. What's the motivation for doing this? That's another question. And we're going to discuss all this. Colton Bartholomew, State Journal. Let's just take our break. We'll get to him now. He'll join us to talk about all this and help us understand next.
Covering Wisconsin sports like a blanket, this is the Bill Michaels Show on the Wisconsin Sports Zone Radio Network.
Bill Michaels will resume in 5 minutes. Bill Michaels will resume in 4 minutes. Bill Michaels will resume in 3 minutes. Bill Michaels will resume in 2 minutes. Bill Michaels will resume in 1 minute. Bill Michaels will resume in 30 seconds.
It's about moving forward. It's about the future. It's about continuing to build, whether it's the 24 guys that are here or the guys that are coming in. There's a growth process that I promise you is a part of it. And, it doesn't always look like that at times, but there's some growth that is going to pay off, I promise you, in the long run.
That's Luke Fickell. I went back and I found that cut. That's from early December. Just gets us in the right frame of mind to talk a little Badgers football. Luke Fickell was extended yesterday. And normally, football offseason stuff, it's probably not going to make my rundown. Certainly on my show, because my show in the evening's 2 hours. So I hit the big things and then I'm done. Bill's show a little bit longer. Bill's in Cincinnati, by the way, this weekend. So if you're tuning in and wondering why you're hearing me, that's why. Apologies. But typically an off-season football thing, Luke Fickell's been extended. Wouldn't make my rundown, but I just found it interesting. A lot of Badgers fans were like, what the hell? And a lot of Badgers reporters and Badgers smart people were like, this is actually kind of a formality, which I'm willing to accept. I just need someone to explain it to me, which is why we've enlisted the help of Colton Bartholomew, the State Journal. Colton, welcome to the show. How has your off-season been?
Not as relaxing as I was hoping. Just a lot of stuff been going on here in Badgerland. A little more controversy than usual for a Badger football program, but pretty good.
New GM, so you've been covering that. New quarterback, although that's just kind of the new reality of college football, I guess, is learn the new guys who have come in and get to know them, and that's the story or that's the podcast. So I guess it's busier. Is that good for you, actually, that there's change and movement this time of year? I guess that gives us something to write and talk about.
For sure. A little more generally, just there's going to be a lot of off-season turnover with the roster and everything. But, particularly this year with, Nigeria Fortune still battling the NCAA in court.
Yeah.
You have the Xavier Lucas stuff. Yeah. So, it's been a weird off-season for a program that for so long was basically like, hey, we'll see you again in August when football season ramps up.
Yeah, and I forgot about the legal stuff, too, with Lucas and Fortune. You've really had to spread your wings into all these different arenas. And you're really good at this stuff, which is why you're my number one option here to talk about Luke Fickell's extension. Explain to us why UW did this. I've read that it's a formality and that it doesn't really change a potential buyout too much, but I guess why did they do this, or what's the reason? What advantage do they gain by doing this?
Yeah, so this is something that Wisconsin does, and they're kind of on one of the last. They're in the small group of schools that still does this. This kind of used to be the norm, where you would make your coach. I'm just going to use football coaches. They do it with all of their coaches at Wisconsin, but I'm just going to talk about the football coach going forward here. But they made it so basically your coach was on however long of a contract he was when he signed. So for Fickell, it's 7 years or 6-7 years. So basically make sure that he's still got the contract runway, at least on paper, that he had from day one. So that way it's never used against you in recruiting that, he's run borrowed time or, there's an end date there that he doesn't have an extension. And the way that Wisconsin's done it for so long and, having rolled this over, between, the Alvarez days and now to Chris McIntosh as AD, it's almost, they're in a spot where if they don't do it or if they change for one coach, it becomes a bigger story. So if Luke Fickell didn't get 1 year tacked on yesterday or on Wednesday, then it's actually a bigger story than if he did. And you mentioned the buyout, and this was something that I kind of had to be a jerk on the internet to people that don't know as much and try to know too much.
I did notice.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say that you were being a jerk. I think you were adding necessary information to the conversation. But anytime there's a slight disagreement on Twitter, oh, he's being a jerk or he's being a guy. I get it.
Yeah. You know how it is. But
I do.
The fact of nothing about how much Luke Fickell is getting paid, how much his contract buyout would be, none of that changed with this extension. And it's a little weird because these years that have been added on, because this is actually the second time that he's got extended because it happened after his first season as well. So these 2 years that are tacked on to the end of his original deal don't really have they're not real. They're almost kind of like an NFL contract, you know, how it's like, yeah, it's a 5-year deal, but the last 3 are kind of wishy-washy and we have the out at 2. The Badgers are still basically in a situation, and Luke Fickell is still in a situation where they have the out at 6 if they really want to, you know, part ways at that point, or more than likely once you got to year 5 of that kind of time frame, then you start renegotiating what the buyout would be, what the salary would be. So, you know, yes, the contract on paper goes until 2032 now, but in reality, it stays at 2029.
Okay, I got you. Colton Bartholomew is here with us, State Journal. You can read his stuff there, and is a part of Badgers Extra as well. So they have a new GM. Their previous one bolted. And I don't mean to ask questions on behalf of the lowest common denominator, but in a lot of ways, I am the lowest common denominator. So explain to us, you know, how that transition worked, the departure of the last guy, the insertion of the new guy, what they do, because this is kind of we've never had to deal with general managers in college football before. So break it down on the most basic of levels for us.
Sure. So starting with the GM position as a whole, I think program to program is a little bit different. So, you know, because like you said, it's a new kind of realm in college football with the general manager. And I think especially when you get to this spring and revenue sharing comes into reality, that general manager spot is actually going to be super important, because I think you need in an organization like this, which is going to be, you know, professional football light now, you need a separator between the coach that's with the kid every day, that's, you know, pushing them and trying to get them better on the field, and then the guy that's determining how much money they're going to make out of this slice of the pie, of this revenue sharing pie that they're going to have. So I think that's going to be a really big role for Marcus Sudbury as the new general manager. He has been the assistant athletic director and basically Chris McIntosh's right-hand man. And anytime you saw McIntosh or Fickell literally the last 2-3 years, Sudbury was, you know, right behind them. And whether it was media days, whether it was interviews, whatever it ends up being, Sudbury has always been around the football program since Luke Fickell came on board. And I think that was a big reason why when Max Steinecker left Wisconsin for USC, they said, okay, we need somebody that obviously we trust in this GM spot, but we want somebody that is knowledgeable of where we've been, the struggles that we've had, the things that we're still trying to overcome as a program. And, you know, when you look at the last couple of years, there are quite a few of those things, but I think that's why Sudbury was a nice fit. This is a guy that's, you know, ran track in Nebraska, college athlete, and before that, and, you know, grew up in Texas with a football family. So he's a guy that knows quite a bit about the game and has worked in the NFL before. So I think having that a little bit of experience with professional athletes helps with the way that college football is starting to trend. So that's kind of the mindset that they have bringing Sudbury in, somebody that Fickell really trusts. And as they kind of evolve this position together, because, you know, I don't think that it's fully set out in stone exactly what the job duties are going to be. I think it's going to be kind of a trial process throughout this first year as they get that dialed in. But getting somebody that Fickell trusts in that spot was really important. And then the process to this point, Fickell, I think, said out of a different interview that he had more calls about this general manager spot than any assistant coach or any coaching position that he's ever had open, just because I think this market is so different in kind of a different role that you can have more of a business background or more of a personnel background. You don't have to have that on-field coaching experience that's, you know, probably a little bit harder to get, in all honesty. So I think overall this general manager spot's going to be growing importance. And I think having somebody that's maybe not quite as tied to recruiting as Max Steinecker was before is going to be a long-term benefit, because you're not going to have those personal relationships, because, you know, Max Steinecker was a lead recruiter and a guy that was so vital in getting these guys here. And then in the GM role, especially with revenue sharing coming in, to have that guy that's had that relationship with you from when you're 16 being like, hey, we need to start taking some money away because you're not performing, that's pretty tough. So I think that overall this is going to work out a little, maybe not better, but in a way that's probably an easier divide for the whole program.
Well, and what is both clunky but also interesting and will be interesting to follow in the coming years is a lot of these roles and these processes in college athletics, they're happening or they're being created in front of us. And then a year from now, we will know 10x what we know now. And then in year 3, like all of these things are going to grow and evolve, and we can kind of watch them from their birth, from their point of inception, which is interesting. Unless, of course, you hate the direction of college football, then all of this is probably poison to you. And I'm not, unsympathetic to that point of view. One more thing. And I saw Zach retweet this earlier this week. This is what I saw it. Zach Halpern, our sports director, Pete Thamel reporting on, or Pete Thamel, whatever. The SEC football coaches and 80s in their meetings down in New Orleans talked about optimism for revenue sharing, NIL cap, that sort of thing, a framework. What have you heard or read or experienced yourself about maybe those things coming into college football in the near future?
Yeah, so I know I'll stick with the revenue sharing first because I think that's the one that's going to be a lot easier.
Okay.
There's obviously the antitrust lawsuit, the House versus NCAA suit. That's the settlement for which is being debated right now. And, Claudia Wilkin is the federal judge that's going to have to either accept the settlement that's been proposed or not. And if that settlement gets accepted, part of that deal is that going forward, the major schools are going to have, or actually I should say all Division I schools are going to have $20.5 million that of their budget that they can give directly to athletes.
Sure.
And I think when you look at how football plays the biggest role in terms of driving revenue and brings in the most people, the estimates that I've seen is going to be 70 to 75% of that is going to go to football players, and obviously bigger rosters or biggest roster is a factor in that as well. So I think, number one, having revenue sharing is going to help out a school like Wisconsin that's probably not ever going to be in that top tier of NIL spending. Like Wisconsin's just doesn't have that endless supply of cash from their fans or their boosters or whoever you want to say that some of these other schools do. And I'm not saying that's a bad or a good thing. I just think that's a reality. They don't have that same kind of war chest. And I think having at least a stack of money that every school is going to have, that you can at least maybe even out the scales for that kid that you're trying to recruit out of high school or through the transfer portal is going to help a little bit. The thing that I keep kind of getting pushed back on, and I don't think is actually as neat and tidy as maybe those SEC coaches wanted to make it seem like, was this idea of NIL cap and the idea that they're going to be able to put a stop to the commercial end of NIL, like the actual sponsorship and stuff. Like, I think revenue sharing kind of takes away you signed an NIL deal with the collective and you showed up to one thing, here's $200,000. Like, I think that's going to end. But the idea that you're going to be able to stop the football player that's also got a YouTube channel or like whatever else, like the commercial end of NIL that was actually kind of the
actual name, image, likeness stuff, like the spirit of what this thing is supposed to be. Yes, exactly. Yep.
Yeah, the thing that it was supposed to be, I don't think you're going to be able to get rid of. Like, I'm going to use Caleb Williams as an example because he was one of the biggest NIL earners in the history of NIL, as short as it is so far. But a guy like that's as big of a star, and a tweet or an Instagram post from him is incredibly valuable because of his following. I don't think you can put a cap to that because that's, anti-capitalistic, and that's why the NCAA keeps getting taken to court. So this idea that they're going to be able to put a cap on the NIL earnings or the way that these guys can go out and make some money off their actual NIL and not just like you said before, like the other stuff. Yeah, the pay for play part of it. Like, that's never going to happen, in my opinion. Commercial NIL is still going to have a place in this. I just don't think it's going to be the number one thing that it has been, because the schools are going to have at least a good chunk of money that they can divvy out and even up a little bit. And again, they're still going to have the Ohio States, the Miamis, the Alabamas of the world that are going to have more money than everybody else. That's just the inequity of the sport. Until you probably separate everything and kind of blow the whole system up again and take out college football from the colleges, in all reality, I don't think you're going to get to a perfect
NFL light model where everybody has the same amount of money and it's just about relationships, recruiting, and et cetera.
Yeah, we're probably never going to get there. And I don't know that you should be able to cap NIL. If you're worth money, go realize that money. Go make that money, right? You've earned that in building your brand, your player. Now, the money coming directly from schools, that's another thing, and that's more tied to revenue sharing. Colton, I could talk to you all day. What are you doing with your weekends now that the season is done?
Well, actually, I've got a pretty big story coming out tomorrow. I sat down with Luke Fickell this week and talked about all types of different things. But one of the things that I've been really fascinated with over the last couple of years is these have been some tough times for Badger football and Luke Fickell in particular. And this is a guy that's really experienced nothing but success throughout his coaching career.
Yeah.
And you could see it in his faces after these games, like losses kill him. And there's an emotion level from a guy like Luke Fickell that I think is fairly unique. Like you see some coaches try to be a little more stoic in a post-game presser or whatever. You can tell that Luke Fickell's dying inside after they lose. I talked to him just kind of about how he deals with those things and those emotions, because like, I don't know if there was a diminishing return at a certain point when you're, that emotional after every loss, or, how that ended up maybe trying to resolve itself through this offseason and looking forward. Cause, anybody with eyes can see, where this football program is, kind of the rebuild that's happening in terms of structure, systems and roster, and then the schedule they're going to play. Like,
yeah.
Nobody's predicting a national championship for Wisconsin this fall, right? Like, I think we can say that. So I think just this idea of how Luke Fickell is dealing with maybe just not the success that he's been so used to is really interesting. So that's what the story coming out on Badger Extra tomorrow is about.
Looking forward to that. I will be there, and that is an interesting challenge when you know nothing but winning, and all of a sudden you're the guy who's got to dig this program out of a rough spot over the last years. I look forward to that, Colton. Enjoy your weekend. Thank you so much for the time. This is great information.
Yep, anytime, right?
Colton Bartholomew, State Journal, Badger Extra. Badgers fans, we are very lucky because everyone on the beat, and of course, Zach is a part of this, Jesse's a part of this, but also Nick Osen, who gives us lots of time, or Colton Bartholomew, or Jim Polsey, whenever we ask a big story, something that we need explained to Badgers fans on the radio, they're all ready to go. And I love that because it's not always like that with every team and with every little media group. Badger people are so good at connecting with fans and bringing us in the loop on this stuff. Really good stuff on Luke Fickell's contract situation and the finances of college football. We're going to take a break, wrap up hour number 3 of the Bill Michaels Show next.
Covering Wisconsin sports like a blanket, this is the Bill Michaels Show on the Wisconsin Sports Zone Radio Network.
You can accomplish quite a lot in 6 years. You go from changing diapers to dropping your child off at school. College, you can get a bachelor's and a master's degree, and you can take up to 6 years to pay off your brand new Pella windows and doors at 0% interest. Hi, it's Gina Della from Pella. With Pella Windows and Doors of Wisconsin, you get so much more than stunning windows and doors. You get the Pella experience. Talk about quality control. Pella manufactures, sells, installs, and services every product. A 10-year labor warranty is always included, so your windows and doors are secure for years to come. Our expert installers are available year-round and can install in as little as a day. If something ever goes wrong, Pella will handle it ASAP because you work with the same team from start to finish. Oh my gosh, why wait? Get the Pella experience and this incredible deal. 0% interest for up to 6 years on brand new Pella windows and doors. Set your free in-home consultation today at PellaWI.com. 25.
Bill Michaels will resume in 3 minutes. Bill Michaels will resume in 2 minutes. Bill Michaels will resume in. Bill Michaels will resume in 30 seconds.
It's the Bill Michaels Show, and we're starting to wrap up hour number 3. One more hour. I'm going to replay our earlier conversation with Jim Owczarski for those who may have missed it, because I know a lot of affiliates maybe don't necessarily carry the first hour of Bill's show. So we're going to circle back to that, but we will have plenty of time before we get to Jim. I'm going to do that towards the end of the show, or maybe the last half hour, to take some of your calls and thoughts. We've basically covered everything so far. We've done Badgers basketball and football. We've done Bucks. We've done Brewers. We haven't done any Packers. There's not a ton going on with the Packers, but I do have an NFL story that I can share with you when we come back. If that piques your interest, Tyler Dunn said some interesting things on Zach Gelb's show yesterday, so maybe we'll get into that next. But your phone calls as well, 608-321-1670. Be right back.
This is Wisconsin Sports. Well, the Bucks were without Bobby Portis last night as he started his 25-game suspension for violating the NBA's anti-drug policy. Didn't matter as they overcame the deficit to beat the Clippers in the first game back from the All-Star break. Giannis Antetokounmpo from a calf strain. He understands the uphill climb the team has without Portis for most of the
It's like that. Obviously, we're all uniform and make sure that we stay on track. We'll have to deal with it.
action tonight. The Wizards debut a $4 earlier this month. Tonight is at 6. We're going to be back. Wisconsin 10 with 5 games for 11. If you're interested in a rewarding career with a strong Wisconsin company, Rural Mutual Insurance is looking to add to the growing successful employees and agents. Apply at ruralmutual.com. The Brewers will open up tomorrow against the Reds. Includes Jackson Trio and William Contreras. The NFL Combine is going in Indianapolis next week. Packers GM Brian Gutekunst slated to speak on Tuesday. With this Wisconsin Sports Zone Network update, I'm Zach Heil, printed.
Good day and welcome, as Bill would say. It's the Bill Michaels Show. Bill is off to Cincinnati. On to Cincinnati? We're on to Cincinnati. I think that's what Belichick said. We're going to bring up Belichick here in just a minute or two. But Bill is off. He'll be back on Monday. No big deal. I'm just keeping the seat warm and making sure the show is on air today. I know because, look, I love sports radio. I listen to a ton of sports radio. And I know how much it sucks when you turn on your favorite show and then the first voice you hear is not the one that you were all excited to hear. So apologies. We've got a pretty good show so far. We have plenty of time left, too. 608-321-1670 is the number to call if you'd like to join the show. Plenty of open phone lines. You can get in right away. I'll get you on. We can talk about whatever. We've covered Badgers hoops and football. Again, thank you to Colton. He's the best. State Journal Badger Extra. Well, I can't say he's the best. He's one of the best. The whole Badgers beat is awesome, and they're all generous with their time. Anytime I request them to come on to talk about this, that, or the other thing. We've talked Brewers. We've talked Bucks. We haven't talked about the Packers. There's not much going on with the Packers. However, in the NFL, this is a piece of sound that I found yesterday, and I found it to be interesting. And at the end of the day, that's what this is about, right? We want interesting topics and interesting things. I have about 2 minutes here of Tyler Dunne on the Zach Gelb show, talking about Aaron Rodgers and his next destination. Oh, yeah, Aaron Rodgers' future. Oh, reliable for a topic. So Zach asked Tyler, and I'm going to split this up into two 60-second chunks. First question, and then I'll play you the answer. Your gut feeling, Tyler Dunne, who we know, go long, used to cover the Packers. Plenty of time on Bill's show and on my show and others. We all know Tyler. Your gut feeling on where Aaron Rodgers plays next year.
I like the way you framed it because it's a gut feeling. This isn't based on specific conversations with execs, with coaches, because I think all that's going to happen next week in Indianapolis, and we'll all get a clearer picture of the situation, Zach. But I think this is Bill Belichick in quarterback form. I think that he probably wants to play, wants to start, wants to make money, and I'll be surprised if a team gives him that opportunity. I don't know how a GM, a head coach, hell, an owner can see what happened in Green Bay, can see what happened with the New York Jets, and allow Aaron Rodgers to nuke your building in the same form and fashion. Is he really going to want to start for a team at quarterback and just play quarterback? I would be shocked if that's the case for somebody that we've seen the same storyline play out again and again and again. It's bringing the buddies, whether they're coaches, whether they're players. It's pseudo GM, assistant to the assistant GM, Dwight Schrute-esque. I don't know. I mean, it's so obvious at this point, right? It's not just one of us kind of trying to explain this to people from conversations behind the scenes. It was on full public display. I would, even though there are a lot of options out there at quarterback via trade, free agency, the draft, I don't know why any team would do it.
So you think he's getting?
So I see where Tyler's coming from, and I would be disingenuous with you if I sometimes didn't think that Tyler was a little harsher on Rodgers. Like, I think he editorializes a little bit with Rodgers. It's like, so Rodgers wanted Alan Lazard and Randall Cobb and Nathaniel Hackett. Okay. Maybe that's a veteran player being a little obnoxious and forcing a team to jump through some hoops. It's not like he, you know what I mean? It's not like he forced them to trade multiple first-round picks to go get a guy. You know what I mean? It's not like he got there and immediately wanted half of the roster shipped out, a la LeBron James in 2018 at the trade deadline. So yeah, Rodgers makes some teams, you know, you're going to jump through some hoops and you're going to have to deal with some things. Tyler's a little heavy-handed on the Rodgers criticism, but I don't entirely disagree with the idea. Let's just break this down and think about the facts, okay? If you were a team with no shot of contending, you're not in the mix, you're rebuilding, you're starting a rebuild, you're in the middle of a rebuild, you're a team without any realistic Super Bowl aspirations for this year. Why would Rodgers make any sense? You know what I mean? He's going to come in and he's going to be his own thing because he's got such a gravity. He's got so much superstar aura that all the cameras and all the everything's, it's him. And if you are beginning a rebuild or you're in a rebuild, even if Rodgers comes in and is a great sport, you're just inviting this whole thing into your building that probably best case scenario is net neutral, right? All of that attention and all of that energy, I don't see many worlds in which that could be considered a positive. Maybe we could think of one, I don't know. But if I'm starting a rebuild, I want to hold to my culture, I want to hold to my messaging, and I want to build this thing from the ground up. Bringing in Rodgers flips over that apple cart a little bit. Now, if you're a team like Tennessee or Vegas rebuilding and you want to draft a quarterback, but maybe you don't want to play him right away, okay, you could go that route. But there are cheaper ways to go that route. There are less dramatic ways to go that route. You could go do what the Vikings just did with Sam Darnold, right? Like, I don't think you need Aaron Rodgers. There are bridge quarterbacks, and you can bridge cheaper and with less drama than you can with Rodgers. So even if I'm the Raiders or the Titans, I'm like, okay, yeah, even if we want to draft a guy and not start him right away, I think there are options we like better, and Rodgers is going to come with a massive bill. You need to consider the contracts, right? The contracts, much bigger deal in the NFL than they are in the NBA or baseball. Like, superstar players change teams in the NFL later on in their career, and it's like, he went for a third. How could he only go for a third? Well, look at how much money he's making, right? Look at that contract. It's not nearly as much of a concern in the NBA or in Major League Baseball. The second part of this answer, and this is really where I want to stick my fingers in there and pick this apart and dig at this and turn this into the next 10 minutes. And if you have thoughts on this too, you could text a call, 608-321-1670, part number 2 of this little exchange. And this is Tyler Dunn on the Zach Gelb Show yesterday.
So you think he's getting shut out completely is what you're saying?
It's a gut feeling, right? I think that it's Bill Belichick. Bill Belichick is the greatest coach ever, and nobody wanted him to come in and completely take over a building, right? You bring in Bill Belichick, it's not just to coach the team. He's going to want to have some personnel control. We saw how his drafts ended there in New England. He left Elliott Wolf with, bare cupboards, really. There's a lot more that goes into it than just saying Aaron Rodgers is a first ballot Hall of Fame quarterback. Of course, he should start day one. You're bringing in a lot more than that, just like you're bringing in a lot more than just Bill Belichick coaching your defense, coaching your team. I don't know. Maybe there's a desperate owner out there, but Woody Johnson, not one of the best owners, to put it mildly. So he was duped. The Jets were duped. I don't know who will get duped again.
The Bill Belichick comparison is an interesting one because Bill Belichick is better than, some of these slap coaches in the NFL. You know what I mean? If you look at some of the worst coaches, or at the beginning of last year, it's like, wait, this guy got a job, or this guy's still employed. But it's more than just about the performance on the field or the coaching acumen. Think of it this way. Who's hiring a coach in 2025? I would like to think it's a general manager who's been empowered by the owner, but we all know that's not how it works. It's the owner. The general manager assists, right? The owner's going to have their fingers all over this thing. An owner is hiring a coach. Well, do you think an owner thinks kindly of a guy coming in saying, we're going to get rid of all these guys. I'm going to bring in my own. I'm in charge of everything. Staff, personnel, draft, free agency, trades. Don't tell me what to do. Don't tell me how to do it. I don't even want to see your face or hear your voice. Even if he's the best coach ever. And I think he's up there. He's better than Lombardi or, whatever. It's beside the point. Even if he's an awesome coach, why would an owner want that? You want to deal with that? And look, maybe an owner should want that. Maybe Shad Khan in Jacksonville should have said, you know what, Bill? Take the thing. Run it. Because Trent Baalke was a mess. Doug Peterson couldn't figure it out. You know what? We're the Jacksonville Jaguars, and I got to set my egos aside as an owner, and we got to take a shot and bring you in. Here are the keys. Go to town. Maybe there's an owner that should have done that. But we all understand why they didn't, right? So now let's think of that in the context of Aaron Rodgers, okay? Who's bringing in Aaron Rodgers? Well, with a deal like that and a player of his caliber, again, you'd like to think just the GM, but the coach is going to have their say, and the owner's going to have their say as well. I own an NFL team. I look no further than last year, and the absolute pig F that Woody Johnson was dragged into. Woody's not a great owner. He's a little bit of a bozo. A lot of these owners are, because a lot of them are, sons or daughters of millionaires, billionaires. They were handed this team and said, go to town. A lot of them are kind of dopey, right? They're not tethered in reality like you and me, the Ham and Eggers of the world, right? So an NFL owner looks at what just happened to Woody Johnson. Oh my God, the media vultures. They came in there, laid all his skeletons to bear, ripped him out of the closet, threw him on the front page of The Athletic, the New York Times, right? We got Diana Rossini circling, Zach Rosenblatt, Mike Silver, Rappaport, Schefter, all circling for every little thing. And it's because Aaron Rodgers shines a spotlight on the thing, right? And look at the moves the Jets had to make. If I'm a general manager, look at what happened to Joe Douglas. I don't want that to happen to me. But Rodgers is certainly going to have some preferences. He's going to have some, I think, suggestions or desires or demands, depending on how strongly you think Rodgers is leveraging himself. I don't want that for me. I want to be able to run my team. General managers of NFL teams, and we talked about this with Thomas Dimitroff at the Super Bowl, you probably get one shot to be a general manager in the NFL. Coaching, you might get a second. If you're great, You could get a third. But if I'm put in the chair and given the controls, given the nuclear football to run an NFL team, I am not bringing in a guy like Aaron Rodgers when we're probably not going to win anything. I'm not bringing him in to take over my one shot at running the thing, at doing the general manager job. And if I'm a coach, are you kidding me? Oh my God, just put a cuck chair in the corner of the practice facility. I'll just sit there. It would be less demeaning because Rodgers is going to come in. He's going to be the spokesman for the group. He's going to set the narratives for the group. And look, Rodgers was an unbelievable Packer, and I don't think he's a bad guy. Okay, this isn't personal. We just need to consider what a coach, general manager, and owner are signing up for as a collective by bringing this guy in. And if it felt like we could win a Super Bowl with this guy, well, then maybe it would be worth it. And maybe some of these general managers or coaches or owners, specifically like Shad Khan, maybe they should put their ego to the side and realize that they don't know what they're doing. And maybe they should bring in Bill Belichick or Aaron Rodgers, but they won't. And it's easy to understand why. Rodgers hasn't been to the playoffs since 2021. That was 4 years ago. I know that he tore his Achilles, and I don't hold that against him. Many do. I don't. But between his final season in Green Bay and his last year in New York, didn't really feel all that close. The 2022 season was kind of a mess, and I know they turned it on late, but then when the chips were down against Detroit at home, couldn't do it. Last year, the Jets never even sniffed contention. Okay, that could be mostly the Jets' fault. Maybe that's not entirely on Aaron Rodgers, but if I run the Raiders or the Titans or some other clown team, we're like the Jets. So I can't bring in Aaron Rodgers under the assumption that, well, he'll fix it, because he can't. He couldn't with the Jets. And even if that's not his fault, it's the reality, right? The last time he made the playoffs was in 2021. If you go back to the end of the 2021-2022 Packers season, at least I think it was 20, or was it 2021? Or was it 21-22? Can't remember. The year they lost to the Niners. They didn't really play great in the month of December. They almost lost to Tyler Huntley and the Ravens. They probably should have lost on Christmas or Christmas Eve to Baker Mayfield and the Browns. And then they get to the playoffs, and they completely just dump their pants at home in their weather against Jimmy Garoppolo. They weren't even close. And that was 4 years ago. And in the last 4 years, Rodgers popped his Achilles. So I don't understand how you could bring Rodgers in under the guise of he'll take us over the top. I don't understand why you could bring him in amidst a rebuild as an owner, general manager, or coach and feel great about it, like it makes sense. Maybe Tyler's onto something, and maybe, for lack of a better term, he's about to get Bill Belichick by the league. Let's listen to that one more time.
So you think he's getting shut out completely is what you're saying?
It's a gut feeling, right? I think that it's Bill Belichick is the greatest coach ever, and nobody wanted him to come in and completely take over a building, right? You bring in Bill Belichick, it's not just to coach the team. He's going to want to have some personnel control. We saw how his drafts ended there in New England. He left Elliott Wolf with, bare cupboards, really. There's a lot more that goes into it than just saying Aaron Rodgers is a first ballot Hall of Fame quarterback. Of course, he should start day one. You're bringing in a lot more than that, just like you're bringing in a lot more than just Bill Belichick coaching your defense, coaching your team. I don't know. Maybe there's a desperate owner out there, but Woody Johnson, not one of the best owners, to put it mildly. So he was duped. The Jets were duped. I don't know who will get duped again.
And again, if I'm an owner, I think of like Mark Davis or Shad Khan. Trying to think of other dopey owners who could or couldn't be in the market for a quarterback. That's almost secondary. I don't think that every single owner in the NFL looks at Woody Johnson and thinks, what a bozo. What a spawn of nepotism, doesn't have a friggin' clue what he's doing. There are some owners, no doubt, in the NFL that feel that way. Totally. And I'm not so naive to think that all of the owners are buddy-buddy and they all support each other. There's absolutely rivalries and there's resentment. And that club, those 32 or I guess 31 nut jobs, like there's a lot of, crossed lines and relationships. But I bet you dollars to donuts that there's at least a couple of owners around the NFL that look at Woody Johnson and say, hey, Woody's just trying to do his best. I think I'm a lot like Woody because my mom and dad gave me all the money or gave me this team, right? They look at Woody and say, Woody was done dirty by Rodgers, who came in there and blew the thing up. And then the media ripped all the skeletons of Woody Johnson out of the closet and laid them bare for the whole world to see. I know that there are other owners in the NFL that look at what happened to the Jets and somehow think that Woody Johnson was victimized, or on some level, at the very least, think, I don't want that to happen to me and my team. I'm not going near Rodgers. I don't know. Maybe he does get shut out. Or maybe he says, you know what? There's nothing perfect for me right now. I'll see if somebody gets hurt. And then he joins the team later. Always seems to happen. There are worse plans. I don't know. I know some people are saying Minnesota. I got a tweet here at Wisco Grant. It says, it makes the most sense to bring in Rodgers and his persona, the Vikings, because he feeds off of revenge, and what better to play against his former rivals and teams. Basically thought he was washed. Man, I don't know. The end with the Packers, I think Rodgers was ready to go, and the Packers were ready to get rid of him. I think it's different from Favre in that, like, I don't think Rodgers wanted to leave the Packers. I think he would have loved to finish his career there, but reality set in for Rodgers at some point before he was traded. I think he realized that his days were numbered, and on some level, he came to peace with that. Favre never did. Favre, his last day in Green Bay, believed to his core that this is my team. I should still be starting. Why are they trading me? Rodgers accepted and understood it. I also think Rodgers is a lot smarter than Favre. You know what I mean? Favre had this stubborn kind of boyhood approach to everything, which is probably the reason why he was such a freaking maniac and that he was so good and he played for so long, right? Like, that's part of what made him great. And I think in a completely different way, Rodgers' intelligence is a huge part of what made him great. I don't know that there's a ton of animosity between the Packers and Rodgers. I don't think that's there. I don't think that Rodgers would dedicate a year of his career and a big piece of his football legacy to sticking it to the Packers. I don't think so. And I don't think Minnesota wants him. I can't underline that enough. Minnesota is smart and well run and invested. I don't think they're interested in Rodgers. I don't think they're in that business. I don't think they should be in that business. So I think that's 0 for 2, both on the part of Rodgers and on the Vikings, especially on the part of the Vikings. Maybe Rodgers would go there, but it's not like Favre where he has set his mind to go there and stick it to the Packers. I don't think that's the case. Let's take a 3-minute break here. If you have any thoughts on this or anything else, time to get your phone calls in. We're going to get to Jim Owczarski here at the bottom of the hour at 1:35, 608-321-1670. You can call and join us next. Lots of open phone lines.
Ready? This is the Bill Michaels Show on the Wisconsin Sports Zone Radio Network.
You can accomplish quite a lot in 6 years. You go from changing diapers to dropping your child off at school. College, you can get a bachelor's and a master's degree, and you can take up to 6 years to pay off your brand new Pella windows and doors at 0% interest. Hi, it's Gina Della from Pella. With Pella Windows and Doors of Wisconsin, you get so much more than stunning windows and doors. You get the Pella experience. Talk about quality control. Pella manufactures, sells, installs, and services every product. A 10-year labor warranty is always included, so your windows and doors are secure for years to come. Our expert installers are available year-round and can install in as little as a day. If something ever goes wrong, Pella will handle it ASAP because you work with the same team from start to finish. Oh my gosh, why wait? Get the Pella experience and this incredible deal. 0% interest for up to 6 years on brand new Pella windows and doors. Set your free in-home consultation today at PellaWI.com.
Certain restrictions apply. Ends 3/8/25.
Bill Michaels will resume in 3 minutes. Bill Michaels will resume in 2 minutes. Bill Michaels will resume in 1 minute. Bill Michaels will resume in 30 seconds.
So you think he's getting shut out completely is what you're saying?
It's a gut feeling, right? I think that it's Bill Belichick. Bill Belichick is the greatest coach ever, and nobody wanted him to come in and completely take over a building, right? You bring in Bill Belichick, it's not just to coach the team. He's going to want to have some personnel control. We saw how his drafts ended there in New England. He left Elliott Wolf with, bare cupboards, really. There's a lot more that goes into it than just saying Aaron Rodgers is a first ballot Hall of Fame quarterback. Of course, he should start day one. You're bringing in a lot more than that, just like you're bringing in a lot more than just Bill Belichick coaching your defense, coaching your team. I don't know. Maybe there's a desperate owner out there, but Woody Johnson, not one of the best owners, to put it mildly. So he was duped. The Jets were duped. I don't know who will get duped again.
That's Tyler Dunn. Go long. I was on Zach Gelb's show yesterday. I just thought it was interesting. Someone suggesting Rodgers may not have a home, and it's along similar lines of what happened with Bill Belichick. I just hadn't heard the two compared, so I thought it was interesting. We don't need to talk about it anymore. Just did 15 minutes on it. If you have a Brewers thought, a Badgers thought, a Bucks thought, more than happy to take your calls. 608-321-1670. Back to your calls. It's the Bill Michaels Show. Who's this?
Hey, morning. It's Doug.
Hey, Doug. In Luxembourg?
No, this is G-Dub's big brother.
Oh, G-Dub. Oh, what's going on? Sorry, I heard a Doug. I got excited. What's up, man?
I know. So I kind of called or started listening late to your conversation about A-Rod.
Mm-hmm.
I guess I kind of missed your point on A-Rod to the Vikings. I mean, do you think that would be a good thing or a bad thing?
Look.
For A-Rod going there.
Put the logo aside and the fact that they're the Packers' rival. I think it'd be a great destination for Rodgers. Man, great offensive coordinator, wide receiver talent, good left tackle. Line should be coming back. Defensive talent. Like, I'd want to go there, play inside. I don't think the Vikings are interested. And it's also the Packers' rival, and I don't know that Rodgers loves that, honestly.
Okay. I guess I kind of missed your point. I wasn't sure if you liked it or not, but I think you're crazy not to have A-Rod in the correct situation. Like, I think you're right with the Vikings situation. Like last year before the year started, if you would have asked me, who do you want as your quarterback starting the year off, Sam Darnold or A-Rod? I'm taking A-Rod every time. And then look what Darnold did, out of nowhere. I think A-Rod could, just despite his age, could still put up the same numbers Sam Darnold did and do the same thing Sam Darnold did. That's just my
let me ask you. Let me ask you this: if everything goes best case scenario, the team around Rodgers plays well and he fits in and Rodgers is healthy and he plays great, what's the ceiling of an Aaron Rodgers led team? How far can that team go?
The situation, I think Super Bowl.
You think so? Okay, you think he has that in him? That's the important question. That's $1 million question.
Yes.
Okay.
Like the Vikings, they have Justin Jefferson. If they got a running back and their defense, oh yeah, I could see A-Rod going to the Super Bowl, bringing them. I
just know an NFC Championship game hates to see the combo of Aaron Jones and Aaron Rodgers coming. That's
they got Aaron Jones. I forgot about that.
Yeah, I mean,
easily,
I think their running game needs to be beefed up a little bit. Kevin O'Connell's a little pass happy, but with those weapons and with Aaron Rodgers and a good O-line, it could work. I just don't think I agree with you. I think the best case scenario of Aaron Rodgers is like a really nice regular season and maybe a playoff win or two tops. I don't think he's got it in him.
Wow. Okay.
He didn't
I
have it
looked at
in
the
him when
stats
he was
before
in
I
his
called.
prime, winning MVPs. How would he all of a sudden realize that post Achilles in a third spot now? It doesn't track for me.
I'm just optimistic. I mean, I think there's a lot of luck plays and stuff. And I'm just very optimistic. I will never say, no, this person can't do A, B, and C based on, what happened. I mean, every situation is different. I think it's a luck, like drafting players, like the Packers. Your defense should be amazing with the number one draft picks you guys have if they pan out. But look at our Washington. I'm a Washington fan. We had all first rounders on our D line, and we sucked.
Yeah,
we didn't do anything, and they still kind of suck. With Jonathan Allen, and Deron Payne, they're not. They don't live up to the bill.
Chase Young never really got there.
Yeah, Chase Young, the Eagles, they hit on everything, man. It's just luck, and that's why A-Rod going to a certain team. I mean, sure, why not? Why not?
I don't know. I would like to see G-Dub. I appreciate it. It's a good call. We're going to get to Jim Owczarski here after the break, so I got to run. I just don't think Rodgers has it in him to make a Super Bowl anymore. It started to get shaky at the end of his Packers tenure. And then I thought, okay, well, let's see him on the Jets because, he's got this crazy chip on his shoulder and he's going to want to prove himself. And then he got hurt, which isn't his fault. And he kind of reestablished himself last year. And I think the best possible version of Aaron Rodgers is like maybe the 10th best quarterback in football. I think that's what he could be. And I just don't think his ceiling is, you can't squint at Aaron Rodgers. At least I can't in 2025. I think, you can make a Super Bowl if everything goes well. And that's a real non-starter for some teams bringing him in. Like the Vikings have got to be thinking, how do we get to a Super Bowl? We just won 14 games, right? We're not interested in treading water or just hanging out. And they shouldn't be. That should do nothing for them after the year they just had. So if you don't believe Rodgers can win a Super Bowl, then why futz with it at all? You can go cheaper. You can go easier. There's just different ways to go about it. We'll take a couple-minute break here. Jim Owczarski, the Journal Sentinel, going to join us to talk Bucks next.
This is the Bill Michaels Show on the Wisconsin Sports Zone Radio Network.
Bill Michaels will resume in 5 minutes. Bill Michaels will resume in 4 minutes. Bill Michaels will resume in 3 minutes. Bill Michaels will resume in 2 minutes. Bill Michaels will resume in 1 minute. Bill Michaels will resume in 30 seconds.
I thought we guarded the ball. I thought our length was a major factor out there. I thought Brooke, Jericho, Giannis, Kuz, all just their length. That was big for us. Our guards fought. I thought guarding Harden and Kawhi, trying to take them to the hand we wanted to take them to. I thought we did the assignments tonight in the second half for sure.
Really good fourth quarter last night. Doc talking about that. You heard a Brooke Lopez cut last segment, talking about how they really got aggressive on defense. And I know Brooke has definitely lost a step. He's maybe lost a couple of steps. But I'm a sucker. I like the guy so much. I get such a kick out of him. And he can still, in moments, give you a play defensively with his length and with his really, really high IQ and experience level, making a game-changing defensive play, altering a shot at the rim, or pulling down, as we saw late in that Minnesota game before the All-Star break last week, like pulling down a big-time rebound or helping the team around him secure a big-time rebound at the end of the game. So I thought last night was a nice moment for the Bucks. A lot going on with the Milwaukee Bucks. Luckily, we have Jim Owczarski here joining us. So between, let's see, Bobby Portis, a Chris Middleton revenge spot tonight, Giannis coming back from injury, there's a lot going on with the Bucks all of a sudden as the second half of the season starts, Jim.
Yeah, Grant. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
A lot happening. I mean, obviously the breaking news yesterday with Bobby Portis kind of came out of nowhere. And then, Giannis I'm curious, Grant, if Giannis would have played, had Bobby not been suspended, he was on that really strict minutes restriction. We'll see if they want him to play 2 games in a row, right, tonight. I'm sure he would love to play Chris here in Washington. But we'll see that in a couple hours. And then, came out here to DC early, Grant, to talk to Chris, his first interview since being traded back on February 5th, and pretty emotional for Chris. Pretty raw, I think, for a guy who, isn't outwardly that way. So of course, head over to jslline.com and check out that story, because he definitely grieved being traded from the Bucks. It took him some time to kind of process that. And so I thought Chris was pretty open. So it's been an eventful 24 hours or so since the Bucks officially started the second half of the season.
Well, we can get into Bobby here in a sec, what you know, and maybe what we will come to learn, or maybe the information we have now, maybe that's all we're going to get. But I want to ask you one more thing about Chris, because your story up at the Journal Sentinel is excellent. And one tidbit that I kind of circled, and you don't need to give us all the goods because I want people to go read your story. But Chris seemed to understand, as bummed as he was, getting bounced in the first round has consequences, right? Especially 2 years in a row. I think that's probably a big part of the reason they weren't playing on Christmas this year, and probably a big part of the reason the Bucs looked around and thought, okay, well, like we got to do something. You can't go out in the first round in back-to-back years and just continue with the status quo. And based on what you wrote and what Chris said, he seems to understand that.
Yeah, look, Chris Middleton has always come across me, Grant, as one of the more self-aware athletes. He has pride and an ego, and he knows he's a good player, but he never carried himself in a way that maybe was beyond his ability. And the reason I prefaced that with this, Grant, is because of what you said. He goes, look, there are consequences to not winning.
Yeah. And
he understands his trade is a consequence of their results the last couple years. It's an interesting thing to hear him say about himself. Considering his status with the team, considering the winning he did provide, and the little bit of unknown of, well, could he have gotten back there? Right. And he also addresses that, Grant, where we're effectively saying, no, like I wasn't going to get where the Bucs needed me to get to physically, which I thought was also really interesting because Chris never would get into that kind of stuff, in the moments in Milwaukee. So yeah, Grant, it was really interesting to hear him just sort of acknowledge, hey, this is the business we're in. And unfortunately, I was that guy this time when it came to, the job not getting done, so to speak.
And it's not always fair, right? When a team makes a move, that's what the money is for, right? I believe the phrase is, it's not so show friends, it's show business. But Chris was healthy in the playoffs last year, healthy enough to be pretty darn good. You know what I mean? It's not like he was the one that missed their playoff run last year, but he's the one who's a little older and coming off ankle surgery. So I feel for Chris, he seems to get it as much as he's bummed out. And I think Bucs fans were really bummed out by this trade too, but I think we also get it. And now we watch Kyle Kuzma a little bit. It's like, oh, there's some youth and some springiness and some length there, right? Even if he's not long for this franchise for years and years and years, right? You kind of understand why the Bucs did it. Let's talk about this Portis injury, because Bobby is not one of their, 2 or 3 best players. It's not like it's Giannis, Dame and Bobby. But for the purposes of navigating the rest of the regular season, he's 26 to 28 minutes a night. He can play over 30 if Giannis or Dame is missing time and they need someone to step up, and he can create his own shot on some level. Like, he's an important player for navigating the regular season, and they're going to have to make adjustments and tweaks. Let's just talk about the basketball first. Without him, they're going to have to adjust some things.
Yeah, and you saw the first of that last night with Jericho Sims finally playing.
Yeah.
Right? He had not seen the court since coming to the team on February 7th. And what's interesting about that is Giannis wasn't playing in those games. And those couple times we asked Doc, he basically said he's not going to play. So, like, our big men are Bobby Portis, Brook Lopez, and Kyle Kuzma. And I think what we need to see going forward is once Giannis is back to 33 minutes, does Jericho Sims go back to the bench? Or is he going to show some things in this minute restricted window for Giannis that keeps him out on the court? And what I'll say is, look, Andre Jackson was nowhere to be seen, right? And so someone's minutes has to go if a new player comes in. What I'm curious, Grant, is Doc has shown this year he will. You can earn your minutes with him.
Okay,
that's the positive way to say that. And I think on the other end of it is that means someone else is getting benched, right? And so I think to Bobby's absence, being that big guy not playing. Jericho makes all the sense. He's already on the team. You may not have to put Bobby on the suspended list and sign guys to a couple 10-day contracts. If you remember, they signed Greg Monroe to a 10-day contract back when Brooke had surgery. DeMarcus Cousins was on the team briefly. If Jericho's able to play with Giannis or around Giannis as a non-shooter, you might be able to keep, not have to sort of mix and match the back end of your roster So yeah, we'll see. We'll see how that, if there's a trickle down effect there, Grant, if Andre's the guy who can't play because Jericho also is not a shooter, I think that's the immediate answer. And honestly, they've got 4 more games to figure that out because they're not allowed to put Bobby on the suspended list until he hits the 6th game of the suspension. So I think at least for this next week and a half, or a week, I should say, they play a lot of games.
Yeah.
Jericho Sims is probably the immediate answer.
And that probably makes Ajax the odd man out. You were correct, because they can't have 2 non-shooters necessarily. I don't know. Maybe they find something. Maybe Doc discovers something that he could put in his back pocket, or a lineup combination or something. Who knows? I'm not going to say that this could be a silver lining or a blessing in disguise, because it's 25 games, which is basically the rest of the season. Let's talk about that. Bobby Portis' representation puts out a statement, makes it seem like a very innocent mistake without any drastic consequences to Bobby's health or his performance. I just got to feel like, and maybe this is the sports radio guy in me, I just got to feel like there are some details of this that we're not familiar with, because if this story is true, the story we're being presented, it seems like the NBA is going a little nuts on this.
So there's 2 things there. One, there's a zero tolerance policy for the NBA for drugs.
Sure.
Outside of marijuana, I believe. But there's a couple things. So one is Bobby admitted to taking the banned substance. My understanding is it's not just the statement that he released after the suspension was announced, though. He admitted to taking the banned substance after he tested positive. So there's that. And then, Grant, this is very serious. He took medication, or a pain medication, that was prescribed to someone else.
Sure.
And that's a non-starter either. While it could be phrased in a way, that's a very serious thing. Like, you and I should not do that. I know Doc Rivers, tried to apply it to himself by saying, "Hey, my hip's hurting. I'm on the golf course. My buddy gives me an Advil." Wow, could that not be an Advil? Like, okay, like we've all lived that life.
Yeah.
But the reality of it is that you should not take other people's prescribed medication. So I think that's where, despite the believability of this, the harshness that it feels like, Grant, it's those 2 factors that are the most important. He admitted it, and you can't do that.
Yeah.
You can't take other people's prescribed meds. So that's why there's really no appeal process here for Bobby. That's why. And look, 25 games. The league doesn't really suspend guys for drugs. Like, this league, it's not like the NFL, Grant. Like, there aren't a lot of drug suspensions in the NBA. They're generally 25 games for first offenses. So it's just something they don't really play around with in terms of their discipline. And so, yeah, you're right. It is 30% of the season on balance, and it is 25 of the last 29 games of the Bucks regular season. So it is a massive blow. But I think from the league's point of view, they just sort of held the line with what it is that they do and why they do it.
No, and that's a good explanation. And I think a way that most of us hadn't thought about it. Maybe the suspension isn't necessarily about the ends. The ends can be explained as, well, this is what happened. That's not so bad. It's more about the means. Okay, well, how did you end up in the spot where you took the wrong pill? It's because, okay, so that explanation adds a lot. Final question for you. This is what I want to see from the Bucks before the end of the season. You tell me if this is a good way to approach it or realistic at all. Can we get a 2-week stretch at any point, do you think, where it's like, there it is? That's what it's supposed to look like. That's what Dame and Giannis are supposed to do together. Those are the buttons and the levers that Doc should be pushing. Can we get a 2-week stretch at any point before the regular season ends where it's like, that's a sample size that I can buy into, and that can maybe give me hope for this team doing something once the postseason starts?
I always assume a team will be healthy. Okay. You can't expect it. But I think when you're talking about like the high ends of things, unless there's season-ending injuries, right? I will assume that this lineup, even without Bobby, is going to get healthy here. Grant, I think once Giannis gets back to 30 minutes, we'll see if that takes a week or 2. but we've seen high-level basketball from this team. As we talk, they're the only ones who have won a championship this season, and I do put some stock into that. We've seen them play 72% winning basketball for more than 2 weeks. So, yeah, even though their schedule is very difficult in terms of the teams they're playing and their length, I noticed that you said you didn't say wins, you said high-level basketball, and I think you can do that even in a loss. And so, yeah, Grant, I do think my only caveat is I think Giannis does have to get to 30-ish minutes. But last night was a heck of a start against a team right in the thick of the Western Conference playoff run, and playing some really solid switchy defense with your best player on the bench and your second best player not shooting the ball at all.
Yeah.
So, yeah, Grant, I don't think I'm going out too far on a limb to say, yeah, I think Bucks fans will see, a stretch of play where you're like, oh, okay, I kind of see why the moves were made in early February.
I would like to see that high-level basketball coincide with wins. I understand they're not necessarily directly correlated on a night-to-night, but man, wouldn't it be nice? And Jim, I think this is why the NBA can be tough for people, and I mentioned this right before I brought you on. It's like, there's so many of these games that we explain away. They lost, but. And I just feel like so many of these games, the result needs to matter more often than it matters. And I think that's, so I know you say that, and they got some tough competition, and I think they can play those games tough and not win, and it's not the end of the world. But I think that's something that people are struggling with the NBA right now. We're constantly telling each other, well, that loss, it's not a big deal. That game's that's not a big deal. Well, it's too many games that aren't a big deal. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and Grant, they are in a stretch where they are. And look, I remember a conversation with you and Bill earlier in the season, actually after that start, where I said, actually, you could probably find the tape where I said they need to win, right? Like, you can't, at some point, you have to win a bunch of games. And it doesn't really matter, like, the who's, what, why's, and where's. And I guess my hedge there, Grant, was, like, yesterday was just the first game they had played with Kuzma and Kevin Porter Jr., Jericho Sims' first game. Like, I think the calculus had changed a little bit for this team since the trade deadline, which wasn't available. But no, I'll agree. I mean, look, they are perilously close to the play-in. I mean, I think they have tiebreakers and enough of a cushion where that's not really a concern. But are you going to feel real great if they're the 5th seed and they've got to beat New York, Boston, Cleveland all in a row? Like, I don't, that wouldn't be great. Or 2 out of the 3 teams, And so, yeah, Grant, I agree with you. Like, winning, but look, you can play high level basketball. Chances are you're going to win. Mm-hmm. It's just, I think for me, it was more of, you might not go 10-1 or 9-2 in that stretch. It might be 6-4, whatever. You know what I'm saying? Like, you might not be like shooting up the standings, but you go, wow, like you're really making some strides here to give you some promise going into the playoff.
And we'll have to discern a little bit when we watch these games and look at the box scores to really try to parse together, considering what this team's going through, Bobby's absence, Giannis coming back. And I think we're able to do that. Jim, appreciate you dealing with me instead of Bill. Enjoy your time in DC, and we'll all go read that Chris Middleton story if we haven't already. Appreciate it.
I appreciate it, Grant. Thank you.
Covering Wisconsin sports like a blanket, this is the Bill Michaels Show on the Wisconsin Sports Zone Radio Network.
Love is in the air at Potawatomi Casino Hotel, Milwaukee. This February, play to your heart's content in the Love It or Leave It $300,000 game show. Thursday night, you could love your prize or leave it for another. For a chance to cuddle up to thousands in cash and prizes, just play using your rewards card. Get ready to love it or leave it. Only at Potawatomi. Learn more at paysbig.com. Must be 21 and a rewards member to play.
You can accomplish quite a lot in 6 years. You go from changing diapers to dropping your child off at school. College? You can get a bachelor's and a master's degree. And you can take up to 6 years to pay off your brand new Pella windows and doors at 0% interest. Hi, it's Gina Della from Pella. With Pella Windows and Doors of Wisconsin, you get so much more than stunning windows and doors. You get the Pella experience. Talk about quality control. Pella manufactures, sells, installs, and services every product. A 10-year labor warranty is always included, so your windows and doors are secure for years to come. Our expert installers are available year-round and can install in as little as a day. If something ever goes wrong, Pella will handle it ASAP because you work with the same team from start to finish. Oh my gosh, why wait? Get the Pella experience and this incredible deal. 0% interest for up to 6 years on brand new Pella windows and doors. Set your free in-home consultation today at PellaWI.com.
Certain restrictions apply. Ends 3/8/25.
Bill Michaels will resume in 3 minutes. Bill Michaels will resume in 2 minutes. Bill Michaels will resume in 30 seconds.
We got a couple minutes. I guess about 2 more minutes. The Bill Michaels Show. Appreciate you putting up with me today as I'm filling in for Bill. He is off to Cincinnati. Literally, he's going to Cincinnati, his hometown, for the weekend. And I know he likes going back. He's going to get some Skyline chili, and I think he's going to connect, like he said, with our Super Bowl friend Solomon Wilcots, who's a Cincinnati guy. There's a real fraternity among Cincinnati people, and you notice this like with people who are from colleges or people who are from, certain corners of the country. There's a Cincinnati thing. Like I'll bring up, a potential guest to Bill. Hey, I was thinking about reaching out to this person. Like, do you mind or whatever? And way more often than you'd expect. I was like, oh yeah, Cincinnati guy. Yeah. Jesus, it's like this fraternity. So Bill's down there for the weekend. You can follow him on Twitter at or Bill_Michaels, the email and everything, the phone number. That'll all be back. He'll be back on Monday. And you can speak with Bill, and he'll give you his takes on everything today. Just doing my best to keep the show going. you that interview with Kurt. That was from last night. I hope you got something from that. Some good Brewers talk. And Kurt's always measured, right? He's never going to fanboy. He's never going to completely and totally like. He's very fair with his Brewers analysis, which I more than appreciate. So I appreciate you guys for listening. Thank you. Bill will be back Monday. No big deal until we talk again a certain number of hours from now. 48 hours from now? 72 hours from now? I don't know. However many hours from now, Monday at 10, until we talk again. Time for us to go. Have a good one.